Chapter 1. Prologue. The Pursuit of the Truth. Author. Zhen. Synopsis and Preface. Before I post the story in 2 hours, I'd like to explore with all of you what it means to pursue the truth. The word, pursuit, has 2 meanings. One is to follow after something and the other to implore. The title, Pursuit of the Truth, uses the latter meaning. Yet at the same time, there are also other meanings to the title. I have searched for many other words, but only the word, pursuit, was the one that was the closest in encompassing the essence of the story in my heart. What does truth mean then? It is written with the word mo meaning devil. I believe all of you believe that devil is simply a villain, a person who does all sorts of bad things. Someone who would soil their hands for the sake of success, even practicing dark arts like a demon lord. In other words, I am referring to the mo, which is a devil or demon. It is just like the wuxia stories we have read before, where they will train with despicable ways such as eating dried human placenta or by forsaking their own humanity. But is this devil really the mo I want to create? I once told a friend of mine that I wanted to create the devil, the true devil. Not a villain or a demon lord that will be lost in time and be viewed as crass and evil by future generations, but the devil. One that will walk on the path and the truth he resolutely believes, even going against the natural order of the universe. It is a deep word which reveals the life and spirit of a character. What I want to write is a story where there was no devil in the world before him, and neither will there be any other true devil after him. What I want to create is a theme different from Renegade Immortal, yet with a much more touching plot. I want to write a story where Su Ming stands on the pinnacle of the mountains looking over the world and muttering in a voice burdened by his experiences and grief, murmuring about things no one has ever cared about. If the world calls me a devil, then so be it. Henceforth, I, Su Ming, shall become the devil. The first devil is left intentionally in small letters. You will see the story I wish to write in 2 hours. Translator's notes. When I was translating, I wasn't convinced by the translated argument if I used devil instead of mo. There was something off about it. That's why I chose to ask a third party, someone who is not the author and neither the reader. And what you see now is the paraphrased version of the conversation between me and a master holder in translation for Chinese English, who happens to be a close friend of mine, and I will paraphrase the outcome of our conversation. Also, the author and I reached an agreement to use devil for mo for consistency in ISSTH. Using mo isn't wrong, because if the title is Pursuit of the Truth and I see the word devil suddenly being used in the preface, I'll feel cheated, and you're right, devil is commonly used to describe evil. From what I can see, that isn't what you want in the preface, but neither is there any good English equivalent for the word, since we're losing the original meaning of the word mo if we use devil. Since another translator has translated this to devil, you'd best keep to it, but what you need to do next is to associate truth to devil. Meaning the truth the main character is looking for is associated to devil, perhaps it is referring to his character, but perhaps it is the path he chooses to take, which we both believe is the case. And if that's the case, you'll need to add a little more explanations to the preface itself. Things that only Chinese readers will understand if they read the source language because we know the many meanings of mo, but not English readers because to them mo is only the devil. Did I manage to convey the meaning though? Prologue. Kala, kala, kala. No one could not tell what that sound was. It was as if it was a sound that could penetrate the body and pierce through the soul, forcing the body to shiver in the cold caused by the blizzard that night. The cold northern wind whistled through and the snow danced with the wind, causing the line separating heaven and earth to shatter into a million pieces, scattering on earth and causing heaven and earth to become one. Looking from afar, it was as if the world was a white and desolate place. It was not midnight, just twilight, but the sky was already as dark as night. It brought about a heavy feeling as if it was pressing on your chest, cutting off your breath. On that white plain, a gigantic silhouette could be seen. It was the silhouette of a huge city like a huge beast prowling in the plains. At the center of the city was a tall altar in the shape of a tower. It was built in the shape of a heptagon, completely black, and was so tall it reached the clouds. It remained silent and unmoving even in the midst of the blizzard. When the wind blew past the altar, that creaking sound could be heard clearly amongst the moans of the wind even when the sounds were brought far away into the distance. The sounds carried about the wildness of the ancients, creating a unique harmony. Is there still hope? Is there? Hoarse mumbles could be heard from the altar, as if it was one with the wind, and it was barely distinguishable. If there's still hope, then where is it? If there is no hope, then why do you let me see it? As if driven mad, the owner of voice roared towards heaven as if he was pouring out his heart and soul into the scream. Standing underneath the altar were countless people wearing clothes made of straw. They stood silently, and if you cast your gaze further, you would see that the number of people amounted to tens of thousands. Men and women gathered densely around the altar. They may be unmoving, but there was a sort of fanaticism that could be felt among them, as if they would sacrifice everything should the person on the altar just speak. The blizzard became heavier. If you've let me see it, then there must be hope, but where is it? There was a hint of anguish and sorrow in the hoarse voice on the altar, and the voice lingered for a long time. Today is the day the Emperor returns, the day the gates to the three lands open, the day the blizzard arrives, and the day all was created. I will predict the Berserker Day once again. The voice grew louder, and with some unknown skill, the colors of the clouds in the sky changed. The countless snowflakes stopped in midair, and immediately went back the way they came. Exclamations from all around gathered in one place, making heaven and earth rumble. There was no longer any snow falling from the sky. All the snow gathered to form a gigantic dragon. The dragon immediately lifted its head and let out a piercing roar the moment it was formed. Those who heard it felt their hearts shaking, as if the sound itself could tear them apart. The snow dragon was quickly covered by its own blood, turning it into a bloody dragon. It let out a mournful cry and flew towards the heavens like a shooting star, as if it wanted to tear through the sky and create hope. It reached the endless boundaries quickly, and amidst its own roars, the dragon crashed into an invisible and shapeless barrier. Heaven and earth shook, and the sounds scattered everywhere. The blood dragon cried out once again, and its body fell apart before their eyes. At the very moment it almost shattered completely, the tens of thousands of people standing in silence under the altar casted hand seals and bit down their tongues, spitting mouthfuls of fresh blood. As if guided by some sort of energy, the blood darted forth like a sea of blood towards the crumbling blood dragon to combine with it, allowing the blood dragon to recover slightly from its broken state, soaring once again into the horizon. All of them watched as the blood dragon soared higher, but at that very moment, the blood dragon shuddered and let out a roar that traveled through tens of thousands of miles, no longer able to stop its body from falling apart. It turned into countless bloody snowflakes and fell downwards, creating a red realm on the plains. Yet at the very moment the blood dragon fell apart, it spoke with a sound completely different from its roars. Death, death. On the top of the altar was an old man clad in a purple robe sitting cross-legged at the center. The old man's face was covered in wrinkles and brown spots. Mumbling, he opened his eyes, but his gaze held no light, a clear sign that he was blind. Before him was a complete spine emitting an eerie white glow. In his right hand was a stone slab, which he held on top of the 13th vertebrae. With his blank gaze, he looked silently towards heaven. After a long while, he let out a long sigh. "Tell the king of you, I've tried my best." While he spoke, his right hand moved once again on top of the odd spine. He rubbed at the animal's spine with the stone slab, creating clicking sounds that traveled through a distance. He looked desolate, and along with the sounds, one could also find a sorrowful loneliness and weakness from him. As the elder of the great Yu dynasty, you cannot see the world that I see. You cannot see hope. Chapter 2. Su Ming. Arc 1. If only life was as beautiful as it seemed at first sight. Mountains. Lush, green mountains. These mountains formed a chain that seemed to span endlessly across Earth, resembling the back of a dragon lying down. The mountain range covered the vast plains. There were numerous types of plants in the mountains, and within them, even more sounds of birds as well as beasts. There were 5 tall protrusions which formed 5 mountaintops. They looked like a human's hand raised with the fingers pointed skyward, as if wanting to catch the sky. In the middle of one of the peaks was a big hollowed-out rock, and a young man was hiding in the shade that it provided. By his side was a woven basket filled with medicinal herbs which surrounded the area with a pleasant and therapeutic scent. The young man had a handsome face, but he was on the leaner side, so it made him look frail at first glance. He wore a shirt made of beast skin, and around his neck he wore a white fang in the shape of a crescent moon. His messy hair was held together by a string of straw. He sat there with a scroll made from dozens of beast skins in his hands. He read it with fervor and shook his head in disagreement at times. Since the creation of the world and of man, the Berserker tribe has existed and it still exists to this date. The people who hold the Berserker's power are known as Berserkers. They can fly in the skies, move mountains and turn the tides in the sea. Those who have the Berserker mark can read the future and obtain the power of the sun, moon, and stars. As the young man read this, he sighed. Yet without the Berserker body, it is impossible to become a practitioner of Berserker arts. Berserker, Berserker, Su Ming, it is your fate that you can only pick herbs and become a common healer in the tribe. Becoming a Berserker who practices the ways of the Berserker is an impossible dream. The young man mocked himself and put down the scroll. He then gazed into the distance and allowed his mind to wander. He had read the scroll countless of times. He could not memorize the contents backwards, but he still knew it like the back of his hand. The sky is round and the earth is flat, as though it had no end, no boundaries. As Su Ming read out the text in soft murmurs, he began imagining the world depicted in the scroll. Gradually, the sky darkened, and dark clouds started to form in the sky. The surrounding wind also made it more humid. As it blew past the trees and leaves, it created a rustling sound. When Su Ming saw the dark clouds in the sky, he was momentarily stunned. Elders' predictions are coming true. The dark dragon's saliva can truly be found today. Su Ming's eyes grew bright and he stood up quickly, gathering the scroll into his bosom. He grabbed the basket with his left hand and slung it on his back. Then, with a lithe movement, he grabbed onto a rope and climbed towards the top of the mountain. The young man's frail body charged forth explosively with a tenacious force. He moved just like an ape. With just a few jumps, he already managed to cover dozens of feet in distance. The dark clouds in the skies arrived like waves and roared as they came. It was like the wrath of the gods had been brought down upon the mountain range. The dark clouds covered the skies completely, as though they connected the heavens and the earth. They covered the land in darkness and were approaching the mountain range quickly. Su Ming climbed even faster, and just as the dark clouds spread out over the mountains, he reached a place a few dozen feet away from the mountaintop. An oddly shaped rock was there, however. It seemed like it was naturally formed. The center of the rock was hollow and there were numerous holes about the size of fists on its surface. It was as if the king of pythons had entrenched itself in the mountain range. Underneath the mysterious rock was a stone shaped like a fang. The rock was terrifying to look at. It was odd, and because it was a mountain protrusion, it looked like it hung in the air. It was very difficult to climb onto the rock, unless one could fly. Su Ming took hold of the rope in his left hand and with his right hand he took out a small bottle from the basket. He held it between his teeth and slowly nudged forward in the opposite direction of the mysterious rock. He moved until the rope he held onto was so taut that it inclined towards his direction. He then grabbed onto the walls of the mountain and pressed his body against it. He lifted his head skyward and looked at the dark clouds in the sky. His eyes shone and his body was still. After some time, the clouds covered the sky entirely and thunder roared. The sound was so great, he thought he might have gone deaf. The wind started blowing mercilessly, as if it was trying to throw the mountain range off the ground. Su Ming's knuckle had already turned white from holding onto the mountain in the typhoon, but he remained unmoving. Strength shone from his eyes as he continued looking at the sky. The typhoon grew even stronger and the plants in the mountain range were helplessly slapped around. The sound of the wind was akin to the roars of a huge beast. It made the numerous broken branches and dead leaves fly, causing the entire place to be filled with branches and leaves dancing madly in the air. Some bigger branches and even small beasts were lifted by the typhoon and subsequently tossed away. Their cries of agony were silenced by the sound of the wind. Su Ming was not going to persist much further in the typhoon. The sky was completely covered by dark clouds. With the sounds of thunder, huge droplets of rain poured down from the sky. At that moment, it was as if the world was covered by a gigantic curtain of water. The rain persisted and grew heavier by the minute, but Su Ming held onto the drenched rope tightly and kept his body firmly against the wall of the mountain. He did nothing to avoid being drenched by the rain and remained still as ever. His eyes were fixed on the mysterious rock above the fang-shaped stone. An unknown amount of time passed and the rain continued growing heavier. The world was surrounded by rain and fog. Under the rain's cleansing, the fang-shaped rock Su Ming was staring at began secreting a black liquid. The black liquid merged with the rainwater and formed a stream that flowed downwards. When Su Ming saw this, his eyes were filled with excitement, yet he remained stationary until the secretion of the black liquid gradually slowed down and finally turned into an impressive golden color. Su Ming narrowed his eyes and with no hesitation, he released his grip on the mountain wall. As he slid down, he took out the bottle in his mouth with his right hand. The rope in his left hand was already positioned diagonally to begin with. When he let go of the mountain wall, his entire body swung with the force of the rope at a frightening speed towards the fang-shaped rock. Su Ming arrived next to the seemingly floating fang-shaped rock with the help of the rope just as the next blast of thunder crackled over his head. This was due to the rope's great level of inclination and the accuracy of his position. With his left hand, he held onto the rope and with his right he held the bottle. He quickly placed the bottle underneath the fang-shaped rock as he approached it. In the brief moment that the rope reached the peak of its swing and began its journey back, he managed to fill up half the bottle with the golden liquid. However, at that very moment, he heard a piercing cry. Black centipedes about the size of 4 or 5 arms crawled out from the many holes on the mysterious rock, pouncing ferociously onto the still dangling Su Ming. Su Ming was not even the least bit surprised. The moment the centipedes appeared, he let go of his hold on the rope and allowed his body to fall at a terrifying speed, avoiding the centipedes' attack. Xiao Hong. Su Ming was falling in midair quickly and his body stiffened as he felt the typhoon cutting fiercely into his body like sharp blades. Even if he avoided the centipedes, he would still turn into mincemeat if he fell on the ground. But he was not afraid. A red shadow rushed forward from the cliff by the side towards Su Ming's falling body on a length of rope. It grabbed onto Su Ming once it reached him. The red shadow was a red, small monkey. It was grinning and its eyes were filled with vigor. The man and his monkey fell on a cliff along with the rope. It was the very cliff where Su Ming was reading just moments ago. Su Ming's eyes were finally filled with nervousness and he immediately put away the small bottle he was holding in his hands. Xiao Hong, we have to run. I took too much dark dragon saliva this time. Huh, what's that in your hand? As Su Ming spoke, he saw a small piece of black stone in the monkey's paws. The monkey's gaze immediately grew sharp and it hid its paws behind its back, hissing at Su Ming. Su Ming did not bother and immediately walked a few steps forward before jumping and grabbing onto a length of rope. He fell downwards fast with the monkey. Behind them, screeching sounds filled the skies and the black centipedes gave chase as they sped down the walls of the mountain. They were like numerous black lines falling down, relentlessly chasing the duo. The little red monkey hissed at Su Ming and it moved about constantly on his body. Occasionally, it would turn back to look at the centipedes giving chase, its gaze filled with terror and anger. It's not like it's the first time we're running away. Those dark dragons won't go down the mountain anyway, so stop pretending. Same rules, I'll give you half of the dark dragon's saliva. Although Su Ming was fleeing at impressive speeds, his tone was lazy. Once he spoke, the monkey immediately smiled, making it obvious it was just pretending. The man and the monkey were familiar with the mountain range. For some unknown reason, the centipedes would not travel into certain places but would rather go around them. Hence, while Su Ming and his monkey were not as quick as the centipedes, they would choose to jump downwards at times and grab onto a rope. After doing so a few times, they managed to escape from the top of the mountain and they disappeared into the forest. As expected, the centipedes did not venture out of the mountains. After a few cries of rage, they returned to the top of the mountain begrudgingly. The dark clouds left as quickly as they came. After a few hours, the mountain range returned to normal as the dark clouds left to venture further down. Su Ming and the monkey made their way towards the borders of the forest. By then, it was already night time. There were dim balls of fire in the distance, all belonging to Su Ming's tribe. I already gave you your share, you still want more. Su Ming was still entirely drenched as he came out of the forest, but he did not mind. Instead, he smiled faintly as he watched the monkey following him with hopeful eyes. This monkey was very intelligent. He found it by pure accident 3 years ago when he ventured into the mountains. They even had a bit of a scuffle, but in the end, they became best friends. The monkey blinked and scratched its face, revealing the tiniest bit of hesitation. But it quickly handed Su Ming the black piece of debris he held onto earlier and let out a few screeches, conveying his intention to trade the debris with the dark dragon's saliva. Fine, I'll let you have some more, but I don't want that stupid rock. You can keep it. Su Ming smiled and took out the small bottle from the basket, handing it to the monkey. The monkey quickly took it and drank a mouthful. Its face showed total bliss. The monkey even swayed a little and let out a burp. It threw the black piece of debris along with the small bottle back to Su Ming and wobbled back into the forest. Su Ming looked at the small, half-empty bottle and smiled faintly. Putting it back into the basket, he then turned his attention towards the black piece of debris. Translator's note: allow me to make some explanations. Why was the title of the novel changed? After some discussion with the author, it was decided that Beseech the Devil did not encapsulate the essence of the novel. That was why we decided to change the name of the novel to, which was provided and approved by the author himself. Why did I opt to use the word berserker for man? Man's closest translation would be barbarian or savage. However, these words do not fully encapsulate the meaning of the idea behind the characters using man. The main reason is because these people are highly civilized, and the words do not do them justice. Why didn't I just retain the pinyin for the word then, which is man? That's because I wanted to give all of you a word that can give you the impact of the power of the practicing man immediately and make you go, hey, that's dope, not gradually associating the power of man to a new word, man. Hence, I chose the word berserker, because they were a tribe of powerful berserkers who fought ferociously. It was also explained to me by the author that man was used to refer to a tribe in China, and also refers to mighty power. Hence I decided to use the word berserker, because they were a tribe of people who were powerful, who in reality fought in a trance-like state, and are civilized somewhat, which I believed encapsulated the meaning of the word. On another note, this is in regards to many of the other names in the novel. I am aware that there has been a translation of Beseech the Devil from chapter 1 to chapter 120. I could have just taken the names used in Piggybottle's translated work, yet more than anything, I am terrified of being accused of piracy. That was why I avoided reading Piggybottle's work so that I would not end up stealing other people's hard work. I am sure that some of you read Piggybottle's work before and will compare this with Piggy's. I am also sure that many of you will feel offended because I might have changed a lot of things. I am saying might because I still have not touched what Piggy translated because, as I said before, I do not want to steal what belongs to Piggy's, whether consciously or unconsciously. All I can say is, I am sorry, and please bear with me. One more thing, it's the meaning of the name for the first arc. If only human lives were like an initial meeting, means that, if only human lives were as beautiful as the first moments you meet someone you like. Chapter 3. The Berserker's Initiation. It was a normal stone that was the size of a baby's palm, and it had an uneven surface. Besides some naturally formed patterns forming the uneven surface, there was a small hole on the stone that made it look like an accessory. Other than that, there was nothing else which looked out of place. In fact, it looked like any normal stone. The only thing out of ordinary was the warmth it emitted when Su Ming held it. The warmth seemed to seep into his body and it was a very comfortable feeling. Su Ming looked closely at it. Yet even after he scrutinized the entire thing, he still could not find anything else odd about it. I remember the elder saying that this was once the land of the Fire Berserker tribe. If that's the case, then this thing might have some powers of fire. That's why it can keep people warm. Not bad. Su Ming took off the crescent fang on his neck and replaced it with the stone before wearing the necklace once again, letting it hang over the stone. When the stone touched his chest, he felt its warmth increase. Let's go home. The young man then ran quickly towards the place with the balls of light. He did not notice it, but at that time, the stone hanging off his chest gave out a dim glow before disappearing. As Su Ming neared his destination, the dim balls of light grew brighter before his eyes, and he saw a settlement surrounded by a wall made from giant wood. The settlement was not big. It could only hold about a few hundred people in it, but in Su Ming's eyes, it was a place that made him feel at home. He could faintly hear cheerful sounds from within as he approached the settlement. From the cracks in the giant wooden wall, he could see a bonfire in the middle of the tribe. There were many tribesmen gathered around it, and some of the women from the tribe were dancing around the bonfire. The gate to the tribe was also built with giant wood. Usually, when it was open, it would be held up with several pieces of rope. Now, it was closed, and there were some burly men standing on top wearing clothes made from beast skin. Their skin was rough and there were white bone necklaces hanging from their necks. They were terrifying to look at. They also wore earrings made of bone, and their overall appearance made them look intimidating as they surveyed the area. When they saw Su Ming running back, the men grinned. "Su, the elder has been looking for you the entire day. Why are you out so late? It was raining just now. Did you go out to steal the dark dragon's saliva again? The elder was looking for me. Throw down the rope, I had a pretty good haul this time." Su Ming sped up, and when he was underneath the gate, he patted the basket on his back proudly as he shouted loudly. A woven piece of rope was lowered down and Su Ming grabbed onto it, lightly climbing upwards. Within the span of a few breaths, he reached the top of the gate, smiling as he saw the tribesmen keeping watch. He then quickly walked down with the ladder propped by the side. Boy's an agile one for sure, and he's brave to boot. He already started climbing Dark Dragon Mountain alone many years ago. Looks like he's definitely going to become the tribe's common healer in the future. It's a pity that he doesn't have a berserker body, or else he would become a berserk healer just like the elder. The men sighed as they watched Su Ming leave. As Su Ming entered the settlement and ran in between the wooden houses, those who saw him called him Su in a kind manner. Su was not a name just for him, but also for all the children who did not go through the second berserker's awakening. Not too far away in a wooden house was a little girl about 5 or 6 years old. She was looking at Su Ming, and there was a sweet and innocent smile on her young face. She had her arms wrapped around a white little creature about the size of her palm. The little creature looked incredibly docile, and was just like a white fluff ball. "Big brother Su, did you bring something for Pee-Pee to eat?" When the little girl saw Su Ming, she started giggling happily. "Tong Tong, this is for you." Su Ming let out a chuckle, running towards her and bringing out some fruits from his bosom. He gave them to the little girl, and as the girl giggled happily, Su Ming ran off. Before long, he reached the middle part of tribe where he saw many of his tribesmen laughing and chatting around the bonfire when he was outside earlier. A fire-resistant wooden fence surrounded the bonfire. Many slices of juicy meat were being roasted on the fire and they emitted a nice aroma. When some of the girls in the tribe saw Su Ming approaching, they merely cast him a glance before turning away uninterested. To the tribe, the clean and handsome Su Ming was built much more differently compared to the other tribesmen. Almost all of the tribesmen were bigger and more intimidating than he was. He squeezed through the crowd, grabbed a slice of roasted meat and ate it as he ran forward. Right in the center of the crowd was an old man wearing sackcloth instead of beast skin. The old man had his hair braided and looked frail. Nevertheless, his eyes shone with a charm that could steal a person's soul if they so much as looked into his eyes. He appeared to be a man of status. He was surrounded by several tribesmen who were listening to him as he talked in a low voice. Their gazes towards him were respectful. As he saw Su Ming running over, the old man smiled and gave him a nod, signaling Su Ming to sit by his side. He then continued speaking to the tribesmen. When the tribesmen saw Su Ming, their faces also lifted up in smiles. Dark Mountain tribe may be small, but at least we are the true descendants of Dark Mountain. The elder from Wind Stream tribe is celebrating his birthday. We must attend his birthday as a sign of respect since our tribe has maintained a good relationship with them since long ago. The old man spoke slowly. It's a pity that a few centuries ago, Dark Mountain tribe was divided, and now, there are only 3 colonies of the tribe left. If that hadn't happened, Dark Mountain tribe would be a medium-sized tribe by now. We could have controlled all the land around the area, including Wind Stream tribe. But now, the one who spoke was a man of about 40 years old. He was the leader of Dark Mountain tribe and was a burly man who was also shockingly powerful. There were 9 fangs about the size of fingers hanging around his neck. There was a mark on his face that could barely be seen, which made him look even more terrifying, just like an evil spirit. The mark was not clear, and it looked incomplete. As Su Ming looked at the mark, his eyes were filled with admiration. From the beast skin scroll, Su Ming knew that this was a berserker mark that had yet to be completely formed. There was no one in the tribe who had the ability to completely manifest the berserker mark and bring out its true powers. Even his elder was only at the 9th level of the blood solidification realm. Yet even so, this had made his elder one of the strongest berserkers among the tribes around Dark Mountain. The only other tribes who could compare were Black Mountain Tribe and Dark Dragon Tribe, who were once from the original Dark Mountain Tribe but split up later. There is no use mentioning what has happened in the past. Without a strong berserker who has broken through his physical limitations, there is no way we can become a medium-sized tribe. The cause of the original Dark Mountain Tribe's separation was due to the death of the ancestors in the original Dark Mountain Tribe who awakened. As much as I have trained until now, I still cannot break through the 9th level of blood solidification and reach the 10th level, much less the 11th level, which is known as the highest level. I cannot draw a completely manifested berserker mark and therefore cannot awaken. The old man in sackcloth sighed and spoke slowly. It's fine. You can leave now. Prepare the gifts, and tomorrow, Shan Hen, you are the leader of the hunters in the tribe, so you will lead the team. The old man stood up and looked towards a middle-aged man standing by the leader of Dark Mountain Tribe. After that, he turned and walked away. The middle-aged man looked calm. When he heard those words, he immediately stood up straight and received the order. Su Ming quickly followed his elder and left the area where the feast was held. The old man did not speak on the way and just silently walked forward until the cheers gradually disappeared behind his back. He reached a house made of wood and grass. He then went inside. The house was not big and the interior was simple. Once he entered the house, the old man sat down cross-legged at a corner. He looked at Su Ming as he came in. You went to hunt dark dragon saliva again. Su Ming respected his elder, who took care of him as he grew up. He placed his basket on the floor and took out a small bottle, which he then handed it to the old man. With your agility, the dark dragons cannot harm you. However, it's best if you don't go too often. That is the territory of Black Mountain Tribe and Dark Dragon Tribe after all. Dark dragon saliva is useless to me. Use it to improve your own health. The old man looked kindly at Su Ming. Su Ming nodded and put away the bottle. He had been drinking this liquid for many years and it was precisely because of it that he could obtain such an agile body. It was also because his elder had been brewing all sorts of medicine for him for all those years. Even though he did not have the qualities to obtain the berserker body, he was still stronger than an average member of his tribe. There are still 3 days left before the time comes for all of you Lasu to perform the berserker's initiation. You're almost 16, right? You will need to worship the god of berserkers. The old man spoke slowly as he looked at Su Ming. The statue of the god of berserkers in Dark Mountain Tribe was passed down from the original Dark Mountain Tribe in the past. It may not be the main statue and cannot compare to the statues of medium-sized tribes, but it is still very powerful compared to the tribes around us. Su Ming was silent for a brief moment before nodding his head. Don't leave for the next few days. Rest and go with them to the initiation 3 days later. The old man said this and closed his eyes slowly. Su Ming stood for a while longer. Then, he took the basket and left quietly towards a wooden house not too far away, his house. He could never forget the day when he surrounded the statue of the god of berserkers with other children from the tribe for his very first awakening. They were all just 7 years old at that time. Members of the berserker tribe had 2 initiating ceremonies throughout their lives, the berserker's initiation. The first was when they were 7 years old, and the second when they were 16. At the same time, the elder would choose those who had berserker bodies using the power given by the statue of the god of berserkers. Su Ming let out a light sigh as he felt his chest filling up with bitterness. He wanted to become a berserker and practice berserker arts. The scenes depicted in the beast skin scroll made him dream about it since he was young, but reality was harsh. When his 7-year-old self worshipped the statue of the god of berserker, he was told very clearly that he did not have a berserker body and could not practice berserker arts. Berserk was the origin of all things in the universe. Only by being a berserker could a person be able to stand above others and become truly strong. From the scroll, Su Ming knew since young that there were many tribes of all sizes in the world. In each tribe, there were different statues of the god of berserkers. It was the soul of the tribe and the key for their descendants to become one with berserk. They needed to reach an understanding with the statue of the god of berserkers. If they felt it responding, then they would be able to obtain the right to inherit the skills to practice berserker arts. There was no need for anyone to teach them. They could just practice it on their own. However, if they failed at 7 and at 16 years old, then it meant that they could not change for the rest of their lives. Su Ming was struggling internally. When he could not see the possible outcome to this, he looked forward to it. Yet, when there was only 3 days left for his final enlightenment, he became afraid. This time, will it be possible? Su Ming went back silently into his house and sat down, letting his mind wander. Chapter 4. The Piercing Light. It was late at night. Su Ming laid on his bed and looked at the darkness around him, unable to sleep. His elder's words kept repeating themselves in his head and he kept remembering the scene from 8 years ago. With a long sigh, Su Ming sat up and quietly pushed open his wooden door. A light breeze blew through his messy hair. The breeze felt cooling, as if it had arrived with the night to cool down the earth. It was quiet. There were only a few soft cries from birds and other animals from Dark Mountain, which was located in the distance. The settlement was mostly dark. The only sources of light were from the bonfire in the center of the tribe. Some of its embers scattered into the air. There were also torches placed on the giant wooden wall around the tribe, which seemed to crackle as they burned in the night. Su Ming lifted his head and looked at the sky. The moon and stars shone brightly in the sky, and it was a sight to behold. The river of stars seemed to never end, and it gradually clouded Su Ming's eyes with uncertainty. The tribesmen are kind to me, but it's obvious that I look different from them. Perhaps this is the reason why I failed when I worshipped the statue of the god of berserkers. Without a berserker body, it will be impossible for me to train in berserker arts. Then I will be trapped here forever, unable to leave, unable to see the world as depicted in the beast-skin scroll. Su Ming sat down quietly outside and leaned against his house. As he looked at the sky, his uncertainty grew stronger. Right at that moment, a melodious whine echoed in the air gently. The sorrow in the notes seemed to have fused with the moon and melted into the ground beneath Dark Mountain tribe. Su Ming frowned. His straying thoughts were broken by that melody, and he knew without even having to stand and look that his tribesman, Lu Di, was playing the shuan again. Lu Di was a low-level berserker. His favorite pastime was to play that strange shuan. The songs from that instrument were incredibly sorrowful, and every single time Su Ming heard it, he would be affected by some degree of sadness, which was why he did not really like those songs. Since the creation of the world and of man, the berserker tribe has existed and it still exists to this date. The people who hold the berserker's power are known as berserkers. They can fly in the skies, move mountains and turn the tides in the sea. Those who have the berserker mark can read the future and obtain the power of the sun, moon, and stars. The young man looked at the sky and murmured softly as he sat in a corner in Dark Mountain tribe that night. At that time, he did not realize that the black stone hanging from his neck was emitting a dim glow once again. Time passed by quickly and the third day arrived. As it was the day of the initiation for the Lassus in Dark Mountain tribe, the entire tribe bustled with activity that morning. Almost all the tribesmen came out with their Lassus and gathered at the square. An entire day was required for the berserker's initiation ritual, especially for the Lassus who were 16 years old. It was like a coming-of-age ceremony. The Lassus who had completed the berserker's initiation could even choose their own partners on this day. Drum rolls with a strange rhythmic pattern resounded in the tribe. Backed by the drum roll, the Lassus stepped forward from the crowd and stood in the center. There were approximately 30 people participating in the berserker's initiation this time. Most of them were teenagers. Although they were still young, their bodies were strong and muscular, and they exuded an air of toughness. Even the girls had a similar build to the men. Hence, Su Ming was especially eye-catching among the crowd. He looked clean and handsome, an odd addition to his surroundings. Even so, the people there already accepted Su Ming a long time ago. Even though he looked different from the rest of them, they did not ostracize him but accepted him as part of the tribe. Once they surrounded the Lassus who were ready to partake in the initiation, Dark Mountain tribe performed a traditional dance as a sign of worship to heaven. By doing so, They used their bodies to convey their respect and sacrifice to heaven and earth. Su Ming, I heard from the others that you also went to Dark Dragon Mountain and even got some Dark Dragon saliva. A good-natured voice sounded from Su Ming's side amidst the cheers from their dancing tribe members. It was a young man of the same age as Su Ming. His skin was rough and he had a large build, almost twice Su Ming's size. His eyes were bright and he smiled boyishly as he looked at Su Ming. Su Ming smiled weakly as he looked at the young man speaking to him. The youth's name was Lei Chen. He was one of his few close friends within the tribe. I brought some back. I went to look for you yesterday, but your father said you went with the hunting team to the mountains. Once the initiation ceremony ends, come to my place and get some. Lei Chen lit up brightly and moved towards him, the boyish smile still on his face. I could have returned earlier, but we ran into a mink deer on our way back. I remember you said that you needed mink deer blood for your medicine, so I followed it. That's why I came back late. Su Ming knew that while his friend spoke of the encounter like it was no big deal, mink deer were exceptionally hard to kill and were very dangerous. Hence, he felt touched when he heard his friend's words. As the two of them spoke, the cheers around them gradually grew silent and the crowd made way for the elder. The elder wore a sackcloth and held a black cane made of bone in his hand. He walked towards the teenagers as he was escorted by a few tribe members. His appearance brought about silence. The teenagers looked at him respectfully, obviously afraid of the man. Offer the sacrifice to our berserker ancestors. His grandfather's eyes were bright as he looked at the people gathered around him, his gaze pausing momentarily on Su Ming. As he spoke, he waved the black cane in his right hand. Immediately, several well-built men stepped forward from within the crowd. Each of them carried with them a tied-up wild beast on their shoulders. The wild beasts were still alive and crying out in rage. They struggled fiercely but to no avail. There were 49 different types of beasts and they were all lifted up moments later to be placed around the teenagers. Their cries resounded throughout the settlement, and their cries sounded like they had the power to pierce through souls. Yet, they were surrounded by the tribesmen of Dark Mountain Tribe. They were pressed down, making it impossible for them to break free. The men standing by the beasts did not hesitate. All of them lowered their heads at the same time and took out sharp stone knives in their left hands. They then stabbed the beasts' throats, cutting off their heads in the process. Their cries were cut off abruptly as they were beheaded. It was a shocking sight and it made some of the Lassus partaking in the ritual turn pale in fear. Su Ming also looked pale, but he bit his lip and bore through it. He cast a glance at Lei Chen and saw that his friend's eyes were filled with a scary glint, screaming out for blood as if he was used to it or even enjoyed it. He looked completely different from the good-natured person Su Ming spoke to earlier. More fresh blood spilled forth like a fountain and filled the air with a foul stench. The blood splattered onto the Lassus, on their hair, their bodies and the ground under their feet. You are fortunate because there are no longer any wars between tribes. But at the same time, you are unfortunate. The elder looked at the teenagers standing before him and spoke softly. When I was young and went through my initiation, I had to behead one of our enemies and drink their blood to complete my berserker's initiation. Compared to the present, you are fortunate, but you are also unfortunate because you only saw the blood of beasts and have never touched the heads of your enemies. The elder mumbled and looked at the Lassus before raising the bone cane in his right hand and pointing forward. He raised his left hand, which was clenched in a fist, and opened it. Immediately, a powerful gust of aura blasted forth from his body. The aura surrounded them and formed a powerful blast of wind that surrounded the entire Dark Mountain tribe. Marks manifested on the elder's face, which then intertwined with each other and formed a picture that looked like a python. The python looked as if it was alive and real. It appeared on the elder's face in the form of an illusion, raising its head and roaring into the sky. Even if they could not hear it, all the members of Dark Mountain Tribe, including the stronger leaders, shivered and took a step back. The mark of the dark python, this is the elder's berserker mark. Su Ming stared at the elder with a dumbfounded expression. As he looked at the marks on his face, he was filled with awe. The last time he saw this was 9 years ago. When he saw it again this time, the shock was even stronger than before. The elder could destroy the entire tribe alone if he wanted to. He has such power, and yet, he is only at the 9th level of the blood solidification realm. Just how powerful are those who have awakened then? Then there are those who have reached the bone sacrifice realm, which is after awakening. It was written in the beast skin scroll that the powerful ones in the bone sacrifice realm are extremely rare even within medium-sized tribes. Only the truly big tribes would have a few berserkers who have reached the bone sacrifice realm. Su Ming felt his heart tremble. His desire to become a berserker was growing stronger. We offer the blood on the ground and the bodies of the beasts to summon Dark Mountain's statue of the god of berserkers. The elder's voice rang through like thunder and broke Su Ming's train of thought. As the elder spoke, the carcasses of the beasts exploded. Their flesh, blood, and even the matter spilled on the ground and on the teenagers were absorbed by an unknown force. They gathered midair into a giant blob of blood and flesh. Berserker's initiation. The big man standing by the elder's side, the tribe leader of the Dark Mountain tribe, shouted. All of the Lassus, including Su Ming, bit down their tongues with no hesitation and coughed out a mouthful of fresh blood. Their blood flew into the air and was absorbed by the blob. A thunderous roar sounded, after which the blob of blood and flesh transformed into a black statue. It was a terrifying statue that was half man, half beast, and it had an air of ancient savagery. In one of its hands, it held a long dragon and in the other it held a giant spear. Its gaze was filled with madness and bloodthirst. Its appearance brought forth darkness in the sky, as if the sky was subjugated by its power. Dark Mountain's statue of the god of berserkers. Su Ming's heart beat thunderously against his chest. It felt like it was about to burst. However, at that moment, the stone on his neck emitted warmth into his body, making the uncomfortable feeling disappear. It stunned Su Ming momentarily. He was about to instinctively look down when the elder spoke. Come forth in order and enter the statue of the god of berserkers to worship him. The moment he finished speaking, a young man walked forward briskly and stood underneath the statue. Then he just disappeared. After a while, at the very place he disappeared, the young man was teleported back looking disappointed. He stepped aside without a word. Next, the one who spoke was the tribe leader of Dark Mountain tribe. His gaze was serious. He looked at each and every one of the Lassus. One by one, the Lassus who were at the age of initiation stepped forth. They disappeared and reappeared again after a while. This continued until a girl stepped into the statue and it glowed a brilliant shade of red. The entire tribe looked forth in excitement, even the elder focused his gaze on the statue. They saw that the statue glowed red 9 times consecutively before the girl was transferred back. She possesses a berserker body. The statue has shined 9 times. This is proof that she has a berserker body. When the girl appeared, her face was bright with happiness. Your name is Wula, no? Very good, come stand by my side. The elder smiled faintly and nodded at the girl as he looked at her. As he watched the girl move towards the elder, Su Ming fell silent. Then he gritted his teeth and walked towards the statue. His actions immediately caught the attention of the other members of the tribe. The members of Dark Mountain tribe were mostly kind towards the young man who was obviously different from them. They kept their gazes on Su Ming until he stood underneath the statue. Su Ming took a deep breath and cast a glance at his elder, who was looking back at him not far away. He closed his eyes. The moment he did so, he felt an indescribable force enveloping his entire body like he was being sucked into mud. When he opened his eyes, everything around him had changed. This was not Dark Mountain tribe, but a small space which was completely dark save for the black statue emitting a red glow floating before him. This statue was the same as the statue he saw outside and it emitted the same aura of ancient savagery. As he watched the statue of the god of berserkers, Su Ming fell silent and bowed deeply towards it. Once he was done, Su Ming's face was filled with bitterness. He knew it. If he had the body of berserkers, he only needed to bow once for the statue to emit a red glow. This was just like 9 years ago. There was absolutely no change within the statue. There is no way I can become a berserker. Su Ming bit his lip and sighed. Then, he turned to leave. However, at the very moment he turned around, he froze and turned back to look at the statue. He was shocked. At the same time, he saw the stone he had been ignoring all this while emitting a piercing light. Translator's notes. Shuan, a Chinese wind instrument that somewhat resembles an ocarina, but while the ocarina's sound is sharper, the Shuan's sound has a softer edge to it. Also, it's completely round. Chapter 5. Strange Occurrences. Under the dark mountain, practically all the tribe members were gathered at the center watching the Lassus partaking in the initiation. At that moment, the giant statue floating in midair trembled and there was a roaring sound. The sound came too suddenly, stunning all the members of the tribe momentarily. The elder's eyes shone and he quickly stepped forward. He did not look at the statue of the god of berserkers but cast his gaze immediately towards the sky. His gaze turned solemn. By then, many members of the tribe had noticed the abnormality and lifted their heads towards the sky. When they did, they saw clouds of black smoke forming in the air at a maddening speed. The smoke was gathered from all directions and it quickly formed a whirlwind. The whirlwind covered at least half of the sky and the entirety of the dark mountain. Even if the mountain range was huge, they could still see and tell that something abnormal was happening on the land. Once the whirlwind was formed, it started moving slowly and it let out thunderous roars which reverberated throughout the surroundings. Within the whirlwind, there were numerous thunderbolts traveling about in arcs. As they crackled in the whirlwind, they boomed. "Have our berserker ancestors returned?" Someone from the Dark Mountain tribe exclaimed. All of them knelt down, their gazes filled with reverence and fear. They turned towards heaven and worshipped. The only ones who were standing were the elder and the leaders of the tribe. Besides the elder, the other leaders all looked alarmed. The speed of the whirlwind became faster. After a while, a typhoon began sweeping through the land. It affected the entire land around the Dark Mountain. The floating statue trembled violently like it could not withstand the pressure that resulted from the whirlwind. On the other side of Dark Mountain, there was a tribe about the same size. The tribe's name was Black Mountain. At that moment, all the tribe members were dumbstruck as a statue of the god of berserkers about the size of 100 feet appeared before them in midair. The statue's size was completely black and had no human characteristics. It looked like a lizard and it kept trembling as if it was about to fall apart. Underneath the statue was a wizened and thin old man wearing a black, long-sleeved shirt made of sackcloth. His gaze was dark and his thoughts were unknown. The same thing happened within the other tribes near the Dark Mountain and even within some tribes that were located further away. No one knew what was happening and how the whirlwind came to be, not even the elder of the Dark Mountain tribe. He had neglected to think about Su Ming, who went into the statue of the god of berserkers for worship. When the dim light appeared within the statue of the god of berserkers at the Dark Mountain tribe's settlement, it occupied the entire space. It bathed the entire area in its strange light. Su Ming was stupefied. He saw various surrounding statues shaking, as if they were waking up after a long slumber. It was almost like they had physical bodies. He saw that the statues, which were themselves terrifying to look at, trembling furiously while bathing in the light as though they could not withstand it. The statue of the god of berserkers was crafted in the image of a hybrid between a man and a beast, something like a chimera. In its left hand it held a huge dragon, and in its right a spear. As it shook, the savage vibe Su Ming felt earlier had however changed into fear. Su Ming was left wondering whether he was imagining it. Su Ming's mind was blank. He did not know what was happening and he did not know what to do. He just stood there, stunned. His entire body was also covered in the light that emitted from the piece of debris on his neck. It made him look like he had fused with the space. As the light grew brighter, the world within the statue of the god of berserkers became completely tainted by the color from the debris. Su Ming felt something shattering in his head. It was as if a barrier had just been broken by an invisible force. It caused his body to tremble and in his head, he saw an odd image. It was a huge plain. Su Ming looked down from where he was in midair. What he saw was hundreds upon thousands of people appearing on the land. He could not see the end of the crowd. There seemed to be no end to it. "Where is this?" Su Ming muttered. This scene shocked him completely and made him incapable of thought. The people were divided into two crowds. They all knelt on the ground and lifted their hands to worship the heavens. There was also the sound desolate drums thundering in the air. It formed a melody that seemed to resonate with the soul and captivate all those who listened. All around Su Ming were hundreds of gigantic statues of the god of berserkers. Each statue was unique on its own and all of them exuded an air of ancient savagery. Their bodies appeared to be made of flesh like they had life. They too knelt down on one knee and lifted their hands in worship towards the sky. Su Ming lifted his head and he saw, at the highest point of the sky were two people who could only be called the pinnacle of humanity. Su Ming could not see their faces, but with only one glance, he thought he was looking at the glory of heaven, and he was just an ant beneath their feet. They were just like real gods. One of them had long, purple hair. He raised his right hand and waved it at the sky. Immediately, the world experienced a change. In an instant, day became night and stars shone brightly in the sky. As the person waved his hand, the stars seemed to be attracted by a force and fell from the sky. They gathered by the purple-haired person's side and formed a river of stars. The man pointed at a direction with his right hand and the river of stars made a monstrous blast before speeding towards their enemies. The scene was akin to heaven collapsing and the powers of the entire sky belonging to one person. The man in purple lowered his gaze suddenly during the blast, and as he looked at the crowd, his eyes locked with Su Ming's. Su Ming could feel his mind being attacked. There was a great force pushing him out, and he was expelled from the seemingly illusionary world. Su Ming trembled, his sight covered by darkness. After a long while, he regained his consciousness and found himself still inside the statue of the god of berserkers. There was no light around him and it seemed like it was all in his imagination. Su Ming's breathing was quick and shallow. His entire body was drenched in sweat. He looked at the piece of debris hanging from his neck. It was still black and it emitted the tiniest bit of warmth, but there was nothing else unusual about it. Was it an illusion, or was it the statue's memories? Just now, it was just like the writings in the scroll. That was the power to control the stars and the skies. After a long while, Su Ming got out from his shock. His gaze was filled with uncertainty and his thoughts were in a mess. He fell silent for a while. Then he got up and bowed once more towards the statue, getting ready to leave. Yet just as he was about to bow down, he heard a chipping sound before him. He saw a small crack on the statue's face, which seemed to grow as Su Ming lowered his back further. The statue gave the impression that it could not withstand Su Ming bowing down to it. It was as if Su Ming bowed down and worshipped it, the statue would break apart. Su Ming took in a sharp breath at this strange sight. He had no doubt about it. What he saw was not an illusion. The very moment the statue cracked apart, there were low mumbling sounds reverberating in his head. Those low murmurs made Su Ming's eyes light up in ecstasy. This sound was what he had been hoping for, the ways to train in berserker arts for those who had reached the blood solidification realm. It was impossible to pass down the ways through oral tradition. The only way was by obtaining it from the statue of the god of berserkers. Hence, the presence of such a statue was of extreme importance in a tribe as it was connected to the tribe's survival. When the low murmurs disappeared, Su Ming's body also disappeared from within the statue and reappeared amid the dark mountain tribe. When he appeared, he saw all his tribesmen including the elder had their heads lifted towards the sky. He felt his heart pounding against his chest and he followed their gazes upward. The giant whirlwind was still swirling about, letting out low rumbling sounds. Su Ming, come to my side. Su Ming heard the elder's voice nearby. He was afraid. He could feel the abnormality in the air and he knew it had something to do with the piece of debris hanging from his neck. However, he did not dare say it out loud. He walked towards the elder in trepidation and stood behind him. Before long, the scene in the sky gradually disappeared and it returned to normal. No one asked whether Su Ming was successful as there was no light from his turn, which could only mean failure. The remaining Lassus entered the statue to worship once more as soon as the sky returned to normal. When they were all done, 2 children were known to possess the berserker body at the age of 16 during that initiation ritual. The 2 children were taken away by the elder as they were going to be important members of the tribe. They would learn about various experiences when training in the ways of the berserkers. The other Lassus left in disappointment. Su Ming went back in silence but his heart was beating increasingly faster. He wanted to tell the elder everything but somewhere in his mind he knew that this was too serious a matter to be discussed. Especially since the statue of the god of berserkers had cracked because of this. Su Ming walked into his house while he thought about it. The elder looked at Su Ming's back from afar, puzzled. Su Ming went back into his house hurriedly and sat on his wooden bed. He looked at the black and uneven debris on his chest, his gaze uncertain. After a while, he reached out to take off the necklace, but he hesitated. He got up and barred the door with a wooden block. If anyone decided to come in, he would know and have time to prepare. After that, he sat down and held the debris in his hand, observing it carefully. Just what is this stone? Xiao Hong found it, so it might have been because the wind was too strong and it was revealed after all the leaves were blown away. Then Xiao Hong picked it up. Su Ming's heart pounded furiously against his chest. He had a feeling he just got his hands on a piece of treasure. Even the statue of the god of berserkers cracked before it. I wonder where Xiao Hong got this. Are there more of these? Su Ming licked his lips, his eyes filled with excitement. I did not possess the berserker body and could not inherit the ways to train in berserker arts, but this thing allowed me to obtain it. Su Ming took a deep breath and quelled his excitement. Then, he focused all his energy on the piece of debris. Time passed and Su Ming grew tired. He held the piece of debris in his hand and fell asleep on his bed. The piece of debris began emitting a very dim glow once again. Chapter 6. Dream. Brother, brother. A fragile voice that had a unique sounding tone echoed in Su Ming's dreams. Brother, are you listening? Brother, brother, I'm waiting for you. The voice was tired, as if it had been calling out for eternity. It became weaker and the sound slowly disappeared. As the voice grew weaker, Su Ming felt a gut-wrenching pain in his dreams. It was as though something of utmost importance to him disappeared along with the voice. The feeling jolted him awake from his sleep. Su Ming felt cold. He was drenched in his sweat. His face was pale and he was breathing heavily. He looked at his surroundings and began to calm down when he saw that he was surrounded by familiar sights. It was midnight. He could hear the sounds of birds and beasts from afar. Aside from that, everything was silent. Su Ming sat up quietly on his bed and looked at the stone in his hand. He looked doubtful. That dream just now was weird. I wasn't tired either, but I fell asleep as I was observing the stone. That dream, that voice. Su Ming's face was clouded with uncertainty. He rarely had dreams and he definitely never dreamed about something like that before. Yet somehow, the girl's voice was oddly familiar. All of this must be related to this thing. Su Ming lowered his gaze and looked carefully at the stone in his hand, using the moonlight as his source of light. He frowned. Just what is this? He hesitated for a brief moment and then bit his finger. According to the scroll, most of the treasures in the world could only be activated with blood. Up until then, Su Ming had never seen such treasures before. The stone was the only one he had ever seen. As the blood from his finger fell on top of the stone, Su Ming began to look at it expectantly. Yet after a long while, nothing happened. There was no sign of the blood being absorbed either. Su Ming scratched his head, but he was stubborn. He got up and used all sorts of methods, be it biting the stone with his teeth, trying to force it apart with his hands, and even soaking it in water. Nevertheless, there were still no changes on stone. It was almost dawn. Su Ming held the stone in his hands and his mind wandered. Time passed and morning arrived. As the sun rose, Su Ming got an idea. When I placed it on my chest, I felt some sort of heat from it. Perhaps this might be its use. Su Ming placed the stone once again around his neck without hesitation, letting it hang close to his chest. Waves of warmth spread out and seeped into Su Ming's body. That warmth traveled through his body, enveloping his entire body in a comfortable feeling. He took a deep breath, and in his mind, Su Ming saw the methods to train in berserker arts which he obtained from the statue. Berserk was the origin of all things in the world. Now, Su Ming had obtained the methods to train in the first realm in berserker arts, the methods to train in the blood solidification realm. Su Ming knew from the scroll that since ancient times, when their berserker ancestors created heaven and earth, all humans possessed remarkable abilities. Yet as time passed, the berserker tribe became a legend. They were no longer as they were before. They had all become common people. The methods to train in berserker arts were also passed down from ancient times, but they had been modified to suit the present berserker tribes. The very first realm, the blood solidification realm, was divided into 11 levels. It allowed the practitioners to activate the berserker blood they had inherited from their ancestors and solidify it. The power of the statue of the god of berserkers was in reality used to search for those who had inherited denser berserker blood from their ancestors, and these people were deemed to possess berserker bodies. Only they could walk on and travel down the path of berserkers. A normal member of the tribe would not be recognized by the statue because their blood was thin with berserker blood. That was why they did not possess the right to become berserkers. That was also why when they worshipped the statue of the god of berserkers, they would not obtain the ways to train in berserker arts. However, Su Ming was special. He may not have possessed a berserker body, but due to this mysterious stone, he obtained the ways to train in berserker arts. Berserker arts was something difficult to pass down even through oral tradition, and it was something only possible for the tribes who possessed the statue of the god of berserkers. Focus and solidify the berserker blood in your blood veins and you will awaken the blood. Draw the berserker mark unique to your own to awaken. Su Ming muttered with his eyes shining brightly. He sat down cross-legged and took a few deep breaths. He closed his eyes slowly. After that, he gradually immersed himself in the training method he obtained. Soon after, the sun had risen to the peak of the sky. Smoke could be seen, signaling the bonfire was lit in the tribe. The tribe started to bustle with activity. The hunting team, led by several leaders in the tribe, ventured out to hunt for food with blessings from their families. Some of the Lasus who were around 4 to 5 years old were running around naked and playing happily. The cheerful sounds brought about smiles on the faces of the tribe members. The 2 tribe members who were told that they possessed berserker bodies were at the elder's house. They were listening to lectures on how to train in berserker arts, as well as how to become a berserker and how to become an important asset to the tribe. As of that point in time, Dark Mountain Tribe only had 22 berserkers after the older generation had passed away. No one noticed the door to Su Ming's house was shut tightly that morning. Within the house, he was emitting a dim, blood-red light. The light came from every single vein in his body. It was a bewitching sight to behold as his blood veins glinted in red. Only one blood vein emerged from Su Ming's body and it appeared vague. It looked like it could not manifest itself completely. After a long while, Su Ming opened his eyes and his breathing was shaky. If more blood veins emerge during the training in the blood solidification realm, then it means the possibilities of awakening would also be greater. But reaching the awakening realm is too hard. According to the scroll, only those who have awakened their physical limitations have the right to call themselves berserker masters. A person who has arrived at the awakening realm has at least the ability to turn a small tribe into a medium-sized tribe. The elder has already solidified half of the berserker blood in his body but he has yet to reach awakening. There is no one around us who has yet to reach the awakening realm. Su Ming continued mumbling. The awakening realm was a dream too far away for him at that moment. He was worried whether he could manage to even reach the first level in the blood solidification realm. To reach the first level in the blood solidification realm, he needed at least 3 of his blood veins to emerge. Those who possessed a berserker body would be able to manifest 3 blood veins very quickly into their training and arrive at the first level of the blood solidification realm. They would be unlike Su Ming, who could barely even manifest the first vein. He was off to a rocky start, but Su Ming did not give up. As long as he could train, he had hope. Besides, when he was trying to make all the blood veins in his body emerge, he could feel the stone on his chest growing hotter. This lifted Su Ming's spirits. He had a feeling that he held the key to the activation of his treasure. 7 days had passed. Within those 7 days, Su Ming barely left his house. He was seldom hungry, which puzzled his mind. It was stated in the scroll that berserkers would have an increased appetite during the blood solidification realm because they were activating all the blood veins in their bodies. This would allow them to grow faster physically and create more fresh blood for their training. However, there was no sign of hunger within Su Ming. He thought about it and attributed this to the strange warmth emitted by stone. Within those 7 days as well, Lei Chen dropped by once to give Su Ming the mink deer blood and take some dark dragon saliva. Lei Chen was tested and proven to possess the berserker body when he was 7. He had already reached the 4th level of the blood solidification realm by now. He was able to manifest 23 blood veins from his body and even within the hunting team, his abilities were at least of an average level. Before he left, he hesitated briefly. He wanted to cheer Su Ming up, but in the end, he chose to look at Su Ming and speak honestly. Su Ming, we grew up together. I'll protect you from now on. If anyone bullies you, then they're my enemy as well. Once he finished, he swung his arm in a powerful manner and left with a boyish grin. Su Ming watched Lei Chen leave feeling touched. Life in the tribe was simple, but it was not boring. Almost all of the members of the tribe had their own task to perform to contribute to the tribe. Half a month after the Berserker's awakening, Su Ming once again took his basket and left for the forest alone after reporting to the members of the tribe. Su Ming was like a different person once he went into the forest. He was agile. He could speed forth like an arrow with a jump and climb up a big tree with just a few leaps. As he sat on a tree branch, he smiled. He was proud of his own speed. Even if I haven't completed the first level of blood solidification realm, my body has become much more agile than before. Su Ming placed 2 fingers in his mouth and whistled. The whistle traveled far and echoed as it did. Soon, a flash of red came from afar. The red blur was quick and it reached Su Ming in a flash. Su Ming grinned widely and jumped forward as soon as the blurry red figure approached. It screamed and chased after Su Ming. Xiao Hong, let's see who reaches the top of the mountain first today. There was joy in Su Ming's voice, and as he spoke, he ran forward. Behind him was Xiao Hong. The monkey's face was scornful. It did not think that competing with Su Ming was something worth doing. It was even eating a fruit in its hand at that moment. Xiao Hong scratched its face and chased after Su Ming lazily. However, the monkey soon grew restless and its screams became sharper. Its gaze was filled with shock and it threw away the fruit in rage, chasing after Su Ming with everything it had. Chapter 7. Gift. Su Ming never stopped moving in the forest. His body was like an arrow as he shot through the forest using his familiarity with the forest and his agility. Very soon, Dark Dragon Mountain appeared before his eyes. Once he got out of the forest, he would be able to get into Dark Dragon Mountain. For Su Ming, who came to this mountain since he was young to collect herbs, every single living thing here gave off an aura that put him at ease. It's written in the scroll that the berserkers can increase their strength by calling forth their blood and make their bodies stronger while they are training in the blood solidification realm due to honing the berserker blood within their bodies. I thought I would never obtain such an opportunity, but to think that I would be able to experience it today. To reach the first level in the blood solidification realm, the manifestation of 3 blood veins is needed. But even if I have yet to manifest all 3, my speed has increased by leaps and bounds. Even my strength has. Su Ming jumped forward and whilst in midair, he swung his right fist at the giant tree beside him. With a huge crash, the faint outline of his fist could be seen on the tree. But at the same time, Su Ming's right hand also felt numb, though his face was filled with excitement. But as he was drowning in excitement, a flash of red ran past him and let out a string of proud screeches. Obviously, it was made by the little monkey who felt pleased with itself for catching up to Su Ming and surpassing him. Su Ming smiled and chased after the red blur. His speed did not decrease, but he could not catch up to the little monkey. In the past, every single time he reached Dark Dragon Mountain, that monkey would be waiting for him impatiently with a face filled with scorn as if it had been waiting for him for a long time. But now, after 2 hours, as Su Ming climbed Dark Dragon Mountain and reached the same big rock with a hollow located in one of the mountains, he saw the monkey. While it still looked at him with scorn and disdain, its forehead was covered in sweat, showing that while it had arrived before him, it did not wait for long this time. Su Ming smiled and went up to touch the monkey's head. He took off the basket and stood on top of the rock. As he looked at the mist around the area, he took a deep breath. He liked standing there looking at the sights before him, even if there was a deep canyon right underneath. If he took a few steps forward and if wind blew at him right then and there, it would cause him to stumble and fall. It was a dangerous place, but Su Ming had been climbing this mountain ever since he was young. To him, this place was like a second home. Xiao Hong, how does it look like on the other side of the mountain? Have you gone there before? Su Ming's hide shirt swayed along the wind and let out light flapping sounds. Instinctively, he reached out with his right hand and touched the black stone on his chest. The monkey by his side rolled its eyes and looked at the land located far away. It did not bother to reply Su Ming, but lowered its head to tug at its own fur as if it was looking for something. Su Ming scratched his nose when he saw the little monkey grooming itself and ignoring him. He shook his head and smiled, then decided to sit down cross-legged on the spot where he stood. Xiao Hong, I'm not going to return to the tribe for a while this time. I might be staying here for a while, so if you go out and play, get some fruits back for me. The monkey beside him immediately lifted its head and looked at him with surprised eyes. It looked at Su Ming scrutinizingly, then smiled happily and nodded. It usually only got to spend 3 to 5 days with Su Ming. When Su Ming returned to the tribe, it would be left alone in the forest. Once it understood what Su Ming said, it was extremely happy. Su Ming took a few deep breaths and closed his eyes slowly as he felt the wind on his face. He was about to begin training there until he reached the first level in the blood solidification realm. Only then would he leave. After all, Su Ming did not know how to explain what happened to him. Somewhere in his mind, he wanted to keep this a secret and let no one know about it. A red vein appeared from Su Ming's body soon after he closed his eyes. This red vein was giving off a dim red glow. It was no longer glinting, but showing signs of manifestation. It was the same red vein that had only appeared vaguely half a month ago. The same red vein that was now manifesting itself completely. Su Ming may not have any talent in practicing the ways of the berserker, but he was not the type to give up easily. Now, as he sat down with his legs crossed to train, time passed by slowly. The sun rose and set, the mist in the sky gathered and dispersed. The sounds of the birds and beasts echoed in the mountains, forming a sort of tranquility. Surrounded by that peace, Su Ming opened his eyes on the second day in the morning. He moved his body. When he looked back, he saw that the little monkey had gone off, but there were some fruits on the ground and some cores left from fruits that had been completely devoured. Su Ming picked up some of the fruits and ate a dozen of them. With his appetite, the fruits could only make him partially full. He may like to eat fruits, but he was not fond of eating too many in one go. Once he finished eating, Su Ming sat down immediately and focused on refining the berserker blood within his body. But this time, Su Ming opened his eyes after a few moments with a puzzled look on his face. The first blood vein has already manifested, but it seems like there's not enough blood in me for the second vein to appear. Su Ming did not know how to describe it. It was as if the first vein itself absorbed more than half of the fresh blood in his body and there was not enough blood for the second vein to manifest itself. It was difficult to explain, but that was what Su Ming felt. I don't have enough blood. Su Ming scratched his head and sighed. He did not know that practitioners of the ways of the berserker, especially during the initial stages, while requiring a strong body to train, would also need to take in a huge amount of medicine that would greatly boost the formation of blood within the body to increase the speed of their training and subsequently allow each vein to manifest one after another. The strength of a berserker in the blood solidification realm was directly linked to the amount of blood veins and blood he had. The more blood a berserker had, he would also be able to manifest more blood veins, and he would be stronger. Once the power was released, even with just their physical strength alone, they could tear apart a huge beast. This was berserker power. All these were the secrets of the tribe. Only those who possessed berserker bodies had the right to know about it. When the members of the tribe were injured, they would lose a large amount of blood. Their faces would grow pale and they would be weak. At that time, they would need to consume herbs that would help with the formation of blood. Su Ming's eyes lit up. After some careful thinking, he immediately slung the basket over his back and jumped towards the side of the mountain. This time, his speed was extremely fast and he returned about an hour later. When he returned, there were some herbs with dirt still attached to them in his basket. Once he cleaned those herbs, Su Ming took out a stone bowl from the basket. He crushed the herbs and mixed it with dew, which turned into a dark green concoction that emitted a strange smell. But he was already used to this smell. He breathed in a few whiffs of the smell, then added more herbs. Once it was done, he took a deep breath and drank the whole thing down. It was disgusting. Su Ming frowned in discomfort but forced himself to drink the whole thing before sitting down with his legs crossed again. It was not until midnight before Su Ming opened his eyes again. When he did, he stared into the darkness and let his mind wander. There's a little effect, but only a little. The method is correct, but something is still wrong. Su Ming frowned. He could not tell his elder about this. He could only rely on himself to solve the problem. That's what's wrong. Su Ming's eyes lit up. As the common healer in the tribe, it was his job to collect herbs. He remembered every time he went to collect herbs, his elder would usually select some herbs from the pile and take it away. The rest would be given to the tribe leader and distributed to the tribe according to need. The herbs would be taken out of the herb storage when there was a need to use them to create medicine to cure the wounded and the sick. Dark Dragon's saliva was among those taken away by the elder. But Dark Dragon's saliva was no longer of any use to him, and thus, all of them were given to Su Ming to nourish his body. There's still some Dark Dragon's saliva left after I gave some to Lei Chen. Su Ming immediately ruffled through the contents in the side pocket of the basket and took out the small bottle. When he opened it, there was the familiar fragrance wafting in the air. He shook it lightly. There was only a little less than half left. Without any hesitation, Su Ming placed the bottle by his lips and drank all the contents in one mouthful. Then he immediately sat down with his legs crossed, immersing himself in refining and solidifying the berserker blood in his veins. Su Ming had been drinking Dark Dragon's saliva since he was young. Every time he drank it, he would feel a bit faint with a sensation as if he was about to fall asleep drunk. But this was the first time he drank Dark Dragon's saliva to assist in his berserker training. As the blood in his veins circulated in his body, he could feel a cold sensation growing within his body, spreading to all parts of his body very quickly. The cold gradually fused with the blood in his veins and increased the rate of circulation in his body. There were even signs of his blood rate increasing. I knew it. Su Ming felt excited. As he continued channeling his blood, his body suddenly shivered. He opened his eyes, his face filled with disbelief and doubt. How could this? Is it the elder? Within his body, Su Ming could clearly feel the coldness emerging from all parts of his body as he absorbed the chill brought about by Dark Dragon's saliva. That cold feeling seemed to have existed in his body for many years and had been laying dormant, waiting for the time to rush forth the moment he started refining the blood in his veins. And the key to activate it was the same Dark Dragon's saliva that Su Ming drank. Now, that cold seemed to gather from every part of his body, crashing through his veins like a gigantic wave to form a sea. This was a gift which the elder prepared for him when he was young. His body that had been nourished by Dark Dragon's saliva was the gift. If Su Ming walked on the ways of the berserker, then this power would aid him immensely in the earlier stages of his training. If he did not have the gift to practice in the ways of the berserker, then it would help keep his body healthy. Su Ming was dumbfounded. He could almost see his elder's kind eyes and his expectations towards him as he grew older over the years. Most of all, he remembered the disappointment in his eyes half a month ago. Elder, Su Ming mumbled. There was a low rumbling sound within his body. The vast amount of Dark Dragon's saliva that had gathered in his body over time rushed forth to drive his blood forward, causing the second blood vein in his body to appear immediately and manifest quickly. As the second blood vein appeared, the third blood vein immediately followed suit. There were even signs of the fourth blood vein appearing vaguely. Su Ming's body began rapidly growing bigger. The speed and the strength of his blood circulation brought about his physical growth. If this continued, then he would no longer be frail and weak, and he would be just like the other members of his tribe. He would obtain a strong body. Yet at that very moment, the stone hanging off Su Ming's chest suddenly gave off the very same piercing light as it did in the statue of the god of berserkers. The moment the light came, things changed. Chapter 8. Barrenness. As the cold light appeared, Su Ming could clearly feel a strong wave of heat emitting from his chest and traveling through his entire body quickly. It spread throughout his body in an instant and fused together with the cold brought by Dark Dragon's saliva, permeating into his blood. A clear roar could be heard from within Su Ming's body. As he was sitting down trembling furiously, the fourth blood vein manifested itself. At the same time, a large amount of black filth seeped out of Su Ming's pores. There was even a terrible stench in the air, but it disappeared along with the wind. With 3 blood veins, one could reach the first level of the blood solidification realm. Now, Su Ming had become a berserker who reached the first level of the blood solidification realm. Still, he kept his eyes closed. There were no signs of him waking up. As time passed, the solidification of his blood gradually stopped as the fourth blood vein manifested. When the little monkey returned the next morning while sniffing at its right claw with a pleased look on its face, it was surprised when it saw Su Ming covered entirely in black filth. It scratched its head in confusion, then circled Su Ming a few times. It may have obtained intelligence, but it did not know what was happening then. Curious, it approached Su Ming and reached out a claw, wanting to pat Su Ming. Just as it was about to touch Su Ming, the light once appeared strongly from within Su Ming's body. It reached its brightest in an instant and enveloped Su Ming entirely, making the monkey hang its mouth open in shock. Then before its very eyes, Su Ming's body disappeared. To the little monkey, Su Ming was taken by the light. This scene made it widen its eyes and let out a piercing screech. It rushed towards where Su Ming disappeared and began searching in frenzy, but it found nothing. It stood there, unmoving and stunned. Su Ming did not know where he was. He was currently looking at his surroundings in confusion. The place was enveloped in white mist. He could see too far into the distance, but he could see the vague outline of the peak of a mountain before him. He had just woken up, but he remembered he was in Dark Mountain. He could not understand how he got there. His gaze slowly turned cautious. He first lowered his gaze and looked at his chest, then felt his heart missing a beat. The strange black piece of debris was missing from his chest. It's gone. Su Ming was shocked. He looked around at his surroundings, then stood up slowly. His gaze was dark and alert as he started walking towards the mist-covered mountaintop. The mountain was not far away. Within a short amount of time, Su Ming was standing at the foot of the mountain. As he lifted his head, he took in a sharp breath. It was the peak of a mountain for sure, but there were no plants on it. It was instead a barren land, as if it had been polished smoothly. There were a lot of pictures carved on it, mountains, rivers, strange beasts, the sky, and even words that Su Ming have never seen before. The place gave off a feeling as if it was from ancient times, as if came straight from the stories about the age of the savages. At the very moment Su Ming looked at the carvings on the mountaintop, a roaring sound echoed in the air. A crack appeared right in the middle of the mountain. It seemed that it had been cut apart by an invisible force. The crack was narrow, but he could still see the depth of the crack. It stopped under Su Ming's feet. Su Ming briefly hesitated, then gritted his teeth. He was already here, and he did not know how to get out of the place. He did not even know where he was. Now that there was a path before him, he had to trudge forward. Somewhere in his mind he felt that this was connected in some way to the black piece of debris, because he remembered clearly the heat emitted by the debris. Su Ming felt as if he walked for a long time as he went into the mountain following the narrow crack. The road before him gradually grew wider. There were also a lot of weird carvings on the walls around him. Su Ming could not understand it, but there were various plants and herbs on the carvings. There were also some naked people with messy hair surrounding an odd big pot fiddling around with the herbs. He continued observing the carvings until he caught a glimpse of the end out of the corner of his eyes. There was a door at the end, and Su Ming paused in his footsteps as he stood at the door. The same carving was on the door. There were 5 different herbs carved in the drawing. Uneven strings emitting the cold light Su Ming was already familiar with surrounded the drawing of the 5 herbs and formed a circle, completely covering the door. Right at the center of the door were 15 small holes. They looked as if something could be placed within. The holes formed a circle. Su Ming frowned, then scrutinized the door. He took a look at his surroundings again, then cast his gaze at the 5 herbs on the door. This is iron core flower. That's right, it's the iron core flower. This is, it looks like joyleaf, but it also looks like the iced catalpa plant. This is the night glitter branch. I often collect these. What is this? It looks really familiar. I've never seen the last one. After looking at it for a while, Su Ming hesitated. He did not know whether he should try and push the door open. Just as he was hesitating, he saw the strings surrounding the 5 herbs move and shine so brightly it could blind someone. As Su Ming was stunned by the light floated from the door and sped towards Su Ming. The light was too quick, and Su Ming had no time to dodge it. Within just a moment, he was enveloped by the light. At the same time, a lot of memories not belonging to Su Ming flooded into his mind. These memories seemed to have been brought along with the light and forced their way into his head. It made Su Ming uncomfortable. He saw the figure of a person in his mind. He was just like the other people in the other drawings, throwing herbs into a big pot. The person's actions were very fluid. Each time before he threw the herbs in, he would take a sniff at the herbs, then his gaze became serious. He waved at the air with his right hand and a wave of fire appeared in the air to surround the big pot. The process was extremely complicated. Even the size of the fire had to be controlled. Su Ming had never seen this before. It was not as complicated in the tribe either. They would usually just eat the herbs or at most turn them into a concoction to increase the effects. Su Ming became engrossed with the memories in his head. A long time passed before the person slammed his right hand against the pot. Immediately, the flame around the pot disappeared. The person opened the lid of the strange pot, and Su Ming immediately saw 3 green spherical objects the size of fingernails within the big pot. Even if they were just memories in his head, Su Ming could still faintly smell the scent of medicinal herbs in the air. When he looked at the 3 spherical objects, he became completely stunned, as if he was hit by lightning. He had been making medicine since he was young. With just a glance, he could tell the quality of various medicines. As he was now, he could not even begin imagining the effects of these spherical objects. The light around his body disappeared and returned to the door, causing the numerous strings that formed the circle on the door to also move. As the light faded, Su Ming's sight became clouded. He moved as if he was pushed by an invisible force. When his view cleared, a red blur came screeching towards him in joy. The red blur was, of course, Xiao Hong. It climbed over Su Ming and jumped happily on his body. When Su Ming disappeared, it had been terrified. Now that it saw Su Ming return, it was happy. Su Ming was stunned. He immediately looked at his surroundings and found that he had returned to the big rock on Dark Dragon Mountain. He lowered his head and saw the stone that had disappeared when he was inside the mysterious place still hanging on his chest. All of this must be connected to this thing. Perhaps when I arrived at the first level of in the realm of blood solidification, I activated it, and all of that happened. Looking at Xiao Hong's reaction, I must not have been dreaming, but went physically to that place. Just what is this thing? Why is it here? Su Ming mumbled softly as he recalled the memories in his head. Quenching the medicinal pills. After a long while, Su Ming mumbled out the name of the process he saw in his head. Scattering dust. This was the name of the medicinal pill, and it was also one of the many memories that appeared in his head. Su Ming spoke in a low tone. In his mind he saw the carving on the door. His eyes lightened up gradually. He may not know where the place was, but it was clear that quenching thing he saw had piqued his interest. In his view, the training to become a berserker is related to those herbs that increased the blood rate in the body. They needed to consume lots of it to make their bodies stronger. That quenching process he saw in his head might be able to help immensely in his training. I've never seen a round medicinal pill like this in the tribe, not even the elder has seen one before, or else I would have definitely seen it. But that round medicinal pill seemed to be working pretty well. I wonder how strong the effects of the herbs would be once I finish making it. Then my next step would be to look for those 5 herbs. Xiao Hong, have you ever seen these 2 types of herbs? Once Su Ming made his decision, he called out to Xiao Hong and picked up a stone, then drew the 2 herbs that he was unable to identify on the ground before he looked expectantly at Xiao Hong. Xiao Hong looked at them with his teeth bared, then gave a nod. Su Ming felt his spirits lift. He walked around the big rock several times as his mind quickly processed his thoughts. I can find the herbs, but making that sort of medicinal pills will be complicated. There's even fire involved. It'll be just like cooking rice. Interesting. Once Su Ming had his thoughts sorted out, he frowned. He remembered that the pot itself was also odd. It was different from the pots used to cook rice in the tribe. As he was searching through the memories in his head, he learned the pot used for the quenching process had an odd name, the Barren Cauldron. The pots used in the tribe should be useless, I'll also need fire. Su Ming lifted his head suddenly as he was mumbling. His eyes were bright as he looked at one of the mountains located further away among the 5 mountains in Dark Dragon Mountain. That mountain was completely brown in color, and at this moment, there was smoke rolling out from the top of the mountain. Chapter 9. Red Mud. Each one of the 5 mountains in Dark Dragon Mountain were different. The mountain which produced Dark Dragon's saliva was the closest to Dark Mountain tribe. If he went any further, he might accidentally run into other people from other tribes. That was why Su Ming spent most his time here. He would only venture to the other mountains to collect some rare herbs, and he did so with caution. Now, within Su Ming's sights was the mountain which had smoke rolling down from its peak, Black Flame Mountain. It is said that there was a huge amount of earth and fire within this mountain. A long time ago, this place was the center of the land of the Fire Berserker tribe. Centuries may have passed since then, but if anyone approached this place, they could still feel waves of heat rolling off the ground. Su Ming was not unfamiliar with Black Flame Mountain. He had stepped foot in this place multiple times. He had even met the people from Black Mountain tribe before. If it were not for his speed aiding his escape, he would have died much earlier. That place was very close to Black Mountain tribe. Black Mountain tribe had held grudges against Dark Mountain tribe for generations. The sizes of both tribes were about the same. There may be no battles between them, but there were scuffles among their hunting teams, and these scuffles tended to be bloody and cruel. There was a moment of hesitation, but very soon Su Ming's eyes lit up as he had a plan. He turned his gaze away from Black Flame Mountain after a long while, then quickly walked towards the deeper parts of the flat stone he was standing on. There were a few big stones within the hollowed parts of the stone. When Su Ming took them away, he saw an object that had been hidden underneath the stones. It was a crudely made bow. It may be crude, but the string of the bow, which was the size of a finger, was stretched tautly across the bow. Its power could be felt just by looking at it. Only hunters were allowed to possess bows within Dark Mountain tribe. It was difficult for other tribe members to obtain one. Su Ming made the bow himself after he exchanged some materials to make that bow with the herbs he collected. He did not take it back to the tribe but kept it here. This was a secret that only Lei Chen knew. As he held the bow in his hands, Su Ming's eyes lit up brightly. He took out another 5 arrows from underneath the big stones. The arrowheads were made of stone, and Su Ming would usually polish the arrowheads so that they would remain sharp. He placed the 5 arrows in the basket slung over his back. Su Ming held the bow in his hand and whistled at the little monkey before pointing at the herbs he drew on the ground. The little monkey understood him, and grinned at him, displaying all its teeth before rushing forward in a red blur. Su Ming followed closely behind carefully. With just a few leaps, the man and the monkey disappeared from where they stood. If they were comparing their level of familiarity towards Dark Dragon Mountain, then Su Ming would never be able to compare with Xiao Hong. Under Xiao Hong's guidance, as the sun became a bright red and started to set, Su Ming's basket was filled with various medicinal herbs. There were about 7 or 8 types of herbs in the basket, and there were plenty for each type. These were all the herbs that Su Ming saw from the drawing, and even herbs that were similar to the drawings. He was unable to identify them completely. That was why he decided to take the herbs that bore similarities to the drawings as well. You mean there's another herb that looks alike here? It was almost twilight by this point. Su Ming and Xiao Hong were standing in the forest near Black Flame Mountain. He was pointing at a patch of black mud on the ground before them, looking at Xiao Hong. Xiao Hong bobbed its head up and down, then gestured at Su Ming wildly before pointing at the setting sun in the sky. Su Ming's eyes lit up in understanding. He squatted down and fixed his gaze at the swamp, waiting for the sun to set. Seconds ticked by slowly, and after half an hour, the light in the forest grew dim. It was almost as if everything outside 100 feet radius within the forest had been consumed by darkness. As soon as night fell on the land, bubbles suddenly emerged from the mud. There was also the vague shape of a red plant. It was rising up so quickly as if it was swimming forward. The odd sight made Su Ming's hair rise, but he did not move. He watched as the red plant continued to swim in the mud, then slowly rise from it. It was the bud of a red flower. The roots were still hidden in the mud. It was obvious now that the flower had been moving about in the mud just now due to the movements of its roots. As he watched the flower buds emerge from the mud, they bloomed before Su Ming's eyes and let out a nice fragrance. Su Ming only took a whiff and immediately, he felt as if his blood was boiling. It was as if his entire body was surrounded by flames and his skin burnt by the heat. At that moment, Xiaohong let out a nervous screech. Su Ming did not hesitate and rushed forward, grabbing the red flower closest to him. There was a sharp spatula made of stone in his hand, and with practiced movements he cut the flower part from its roots, then threw it into the basket over his back. Once he was done, Su Ming did not linger and left quickly with Xiaohong. As soon as Su Ming left, there was the sound of a roar from a beast from within the mud, and all the red flowers immediately closed their petals before sinking into the mud once more. Soon, fresh blood emerged from the mud and the stench of blood filled the air. Su Ming and Xiaohong left in a hurry. When the sky darkened completely, they were sitting on a tree and looking through their hall using the moonlight. There were many types of herbs in the basket, a sight which made Su Ming excited. He saw the quenching scene in his mind once again, and he became even more excited to do it. It's a pity I don't know the effects of scattering dust, but it should be really good nonetheless. Su Ming licked his lips, casting his gaze towards two of the herbs in the basket. These two herbs were similar in color, and if he was not looking at them closely they would look exactly the same. They are both red, and the only difference between them was that one of them had 6 petals, and the other 5 petals. Su Ming was not familiar with those two herbs. They were the only ones he had never seen before in the making of scattering dust. It was fortunate that Xiaohong had seen them before and could bring Su Ming to them. Just which one of them is the one necessary to make the medicine? Su Ming frowned. He swept his gaze along the two herbs. He had obtained the 6-petal flower from the mud. As he remembered the strange sight that had happened when it bloomed, Su Ming had a feeling that if he ate this raw, his body would explode. He placed the herb once more in the basket and laid down on the branch, then took a bite at a piece of fruit. He watched the stars in the sky and breathed in the air in the forest. He could hear the sounds of the beasts and birds around him. It was as if he had become one with the forest, and it was a comfortable feeling. Xiaohong was grooming itself by the side while it warily surveyed their surroundings. The man and the monkey spent the night on the tree just like that. As the sun rose the next morning, Su Ming and Xiaohong left the tree and hurried towards Black Flame Mountain as the forest was covered by darkness and surrounded by a thin veil of mist. Su Ming remained on alert as he held the bow in his hands. Xiaohong was also affected by this and was also wary of its surroundings. When the sun rose to the sky, the snow-like mist disappeared from the forest. There was a gigantic mountain before his eyes. The mountain was brown, and he could feel waves of heat rolling off the ground onto his face. He could even see puffs of black smoke rising into the air at the very top of the mountain. It was a sight to behold from afar. Black Flame Mountain, Su Ming muttered softly, then cast a wary eye at his surroundings before rushing up the mountain with no hesitation. He was already prepared before he came. There were a lot of heat-repellent herbs under his feet, and with their presence, Su Ming could climb to the top of the mountain without stopping. He may be climbing really quickly, but he remained alert, and his wariness only increased as he climbed further up. He did not know how long he took, but as he was halfway up the mountain, Xiaohong let out a screech as he was about to continue upward. Su Ming immediately hid his body in one of the cracks by the side of the mountain without any hesitation as soon as he heard the screech. He planted his feet firmly on the ground and lifted the bow in his right hand as he quickly took out an arrow. It was all done within the span of a breath. Xiaohong arrived before Su Ming, and was now pressed closely to him. Su Ming breathed slowly, his eyes cold. From where he stood, if any of the members from Black Mountain tribe noticed him, then they would have to fight till the death. Very soon, soft voices traveled to where he stood, and there were even sounds of stones falling as they spoke. Why are they asking us to mine stones so early in the morning? What is this for anyway? Stop complaining. This is a request from the tribe leader, we just need to do it. By the way, did you hear? The elder is about to reach the next level. I also heard about it from the other tribe members that the elder is different than how he is usually. He's a bit terrifying now. Could the tribe leader be asking us to mine these stones for the elder? The voices became clearer and then gradually faded. Su Ming remained still as he stood pressed against the crack. It was not until the two people had gone further away that he let out a sigh of relief. Black Mountain Tribe's elder is about to reach the next level. I remember the elder once saying that the elder in Black Mountain Tribe was at the 8th level of the blood solidification realm, but he has mastered a fallen art just so that he could go up against the elder. Su Ming narrowed his eyes. He would have to return later to tell his elder about this. He waited for a bit longer to make sure those two had gone far away, then Su Ming continued scaling the mountain. But at that moment, the little monkey by his side grabbed his shirt. Su Ming immediately turned his head in alarm, but he only saw the monkey's face bright with excitement, pointing towards the crack they had stayed. There was a small, naturally formed hole over there, and steam was rising from it. Su Ming immediately gave up on climbing the mountain any further and decided to approach the small hole. After careful scrutiny, he took off the basket on his back and brought it into the hole as he crawled into it, with Xiaohong keeping close to his footsteps. The hole was not big, and Su Ming only managed to get in because he was on the smaller side. If it were any of the other members of the Berserker tribe, they would not have been able to make it in. Chapter 10. Quenching of Herbs. The hole was strange. It was completely even in size. When Su Ming saw the end of the hole some 100 feet later, he started slowing down. He approached the exit carefully. As he looked out, he was momentarily stunned, then he took a deep breath. This was a fire cave. There were vast amounts of stalactites hanging from the ceiling. The surface of these rocks were dry and cracked, as if they would crumble into pieces at any moment. The ground was black, but there were lines upon lines of red rocks flowing downwards, turning the place brown. The heat was even stronger in here compared to when they were outside. There was a black skeleton hanging near him. The skeleton was about 80 to 90 feet long, and Su Ming could tell with just one glance that it was the skeleton of a python. On the python's head was a horn about the size of an arm. It was black in color. Su Ming had never seen such a long python before, but he remembered hearing from his elder that there was once a species of pythons in Dark Dragon Mountain. They were fierce creatures, and these pythons all possessed horns on their heads. They were known as horned pythons, and the sharpness of the horn could be given to the tribe as tribute. There was one such horn in Dark Mountain tribe, and it was treated as the symbol of the tribe leader in the tribe. Could this be the horned python? He looked at the horned python's skeleton, then at the cave he was located, and an answer formed in his head. In his silence Su Ming took out one of the herbs from the basket and threw it downwards. As the herb floated downwards and was about to touch the floor, it let out a sizzling sound. About 15 minutes later, it withered. He tried a few more times to test the heat on the ground, and decided that while the heat was strong, he could withstand it for some time, as long as he did not touch the red stones. Xiaohong was already growing impatient. If it did not know the dangers of this place, it would have jumped down much earlier. Su Ming climbed out of the hole carefully, then jumped downwards and landed on the floor. Immediately, there were sizzling sounds coming from underneath his feet. A wave of heat seeped into his body from his feet, but it would not be strong enough to burn his feet for the time being. When Xiaohong entered the fire cave, sweat poured down its body like a river. It pondered for a while before returning once more to the small hole, refusing to go back into the fire cave. Instead, it chose to go somewhere else to play. Su Ming did not continue trying to persuade it, but chose to carry the basket on his back and hurry onward. He could tell that this was connected to the inner parts of Black Flame Mountain, and there just might be a suitable place to perform the quenching of herbs later. Not far down the road was an empty space. Su Ming did not know where it was connected to. There were a few potholes on the ground, and the heat was even stronger over there. Su Ming could even feel a scalding heat underneath his feet. He was just about to step on the empty space after a brief moment of hesitation when he felt a strong wave of heat bursting forth. Su Ming let out a yelp and immediately retreated, his pupils dilating in fear. He saw a blast of fire the size of an arm rushing forth from one of the potholes, lighting up the cave instantly. Su Ming took in a deep breath and retreated once more until he reached the mouth of the cave. Then he cast his gaze forward. About half an hour passed before the fire gradually disappeared. But no sooner than it did, another blast of fire emerged from another pothole. As soon as it disappeared, another blast of fire came out once more. It was an endless cycle. Fire! Su Ming stared at the potholes, then his eyes gradually lit up in excitement. There is fire here, but they will appear only once in a while, and it's not a stable source of fire either. Once the excitement faded, Su Ming took a moment to gather his thoughts, feeling a little disappointed. No matter. I might be able to reach the deepest parts of the mountain through the peak of the mountain, and I might even find a better place which might be hidden here. If there's any danger, I can leave quickly as well. Very well, this will be my very first place to perform the quenching of herbs. Su Ming's eyes were bright with excitement as he looked around. I have fire now, so the only thing I'm missing now is the barren cauldron. I'll make one myself. Su Ming then cast his gaze on the scattered rocks on the ground. These stones have been here for many years, but have not turned into ashes. They must be able to withstand a great amount of heat, so they should be able to be used for quenching. Su Ming scratched his head, then changed the herbs underneath his feet before jumping down once more. He chose a more suitable looking piece of stone, then touched the surface after a brief moment of hesitation. It was not too hot, just a bit warm. Once he was certain of using the big stone as a material, Su Ming took out his own spatula. The spatula was extremely sharp and had been constantly polished by Su Ming himself. As he took up the spatula, he used every ounce of his strength and started cutting into the stone. It was an extremely dull process, but one Su Ming was already used to. There was no hesitation within his movements, but as he was cutting into the stone, a thought suddenly crossed his mind. He looked at the skull of the python, and especially at the horn on its skull. Su Ming went over quickly and looked at the skull for a moment. He gave a light knock at the skull, and when he did, there was a cracking sound, and the entire skeleton immediately turned into ashes. Only the black horn remained unscathed. I knew it. This horn is extraordinary. I was just wondering how the python came to this place. Su Ming picked up the horn and sliced it across the wall to his side. There was a crack following his motion, but the scene did not surprise Su Ming. But why did the horned python climb into this place? Su Ming did not understand, but he still took up the horn and went to the rock and started cutting into it. With the help of the horn, after a few hours, a stone stove that was almost similar to the barren cauldron in Su Ming's memories was born. Su Ming even made a lid for it to keep the heat from escaping from within the cauldron. Let's try it out first. Su Ming was excited. He pushed the barren cauldron to the potholes and forced himself to calm down as he waited. After a few hours, after numerous blasts of fire finally emerged from the pothole near Su Ming. As soon as the fire erupted, Su Ming pushed the stone stove right on top of the erupting pothole. Su Ming was nervous. It all depended on whether the cauldron he made could withstand the heat now. Very soon, the cauldron became red and heat rolled off from its surface. There were even sizzling sounds, and Su Ming saw the surface of the cauldron cracking in multiple times. Su Ming felt his heart still, but when there were no signs of the stone crumbling, he gradually began to relax. 2 hours, there is only 2 hours each time. I don't think it's enough. Su Ming sank into his own thoughts. It can even be said that he was truly spending all his effort to make sure this quenching process would work. Then how about this? Su Ming took a few steps back. He may have a plan in his head, but he did not dare act recklessly. Instead, he stood at a place that was not too hot and focused on those potholes. A day passed by while he was doing that. During that period of time, the little monkey dropped by and left some fruits on a place that was not too hot before leaving once more to play. As for the stone cauldron, it withstood the test of fire and did not crumble no matter how many times it was burned. There seems to be some sort of pattern for the eruptions, but there doesn't seem to be any patterns either. After a day, Su Ming picked up the horn and went to the potholes, cutting a ravine on the ground, connecting one of the potholes underneath the cauldron. He did not stop there, but instead make 6 other ravines before retreating. Very soon, one of the potholes erupted once more, and most of the flames flowed into the ravine and went underneath the cauldron. I made it. Su Ming only looked at it for a moment before going off to make another 5 ravines, then he backed off to observe for another day. As he was sure his method worked in extending the period of time for the fire underneath his cauldron, he became relaxed. To tell the truth, he was worried about it. The lines of the ravines were not drawn on a whim. He had to make sure that the flames underneath the cauldron were not too strong or too weak, or else the pills would come out misshapen. After all, there were times when several potholes erupted at once. If this happened multiple times, then it might be dangerous. Once he solved two of the most basic of his problems, Su Ming calmed down and began his very first quenching process according to the memories in his head. He had the little monkey preparing his meals for him, and there were times when Su Ming went out to hunt some smaller prey before bringing them into the cave to roast it. Su Ming also used the chance to tell the hunting team from his own tribe about the elder in Black Mountain tribe as he met them by chance while he was out hunting. Time passed by, and sounds of frustrations could be heard from this place that he claimed as his own for the purposes of quenching. Half a month had passed by. Su Ming's eyes had turned red by this point. For the entirety of the half a month he spent, for all the numerous times he tried refining the herbs he had, there was not once where he was successful. He was now at the first level in the blood solidification realm, and he even manifested 4 blood veins. If only he could manifest 2 more, then he would reach the second level in the blood solidification realm. Once he reached the second level, then Su Ming would be able to use the first of the berserker arts which he inherited from the statue of the god of berserkers. This was a dream for Su Ming, and also the reason why he did not give up on trying to create the medicinal pills. But after a month's worth of failures, Su Ming was at the verge of giving up. But his obstinacy did not allow him to give up so easily. "I won't believe it. Xiao Hong, collect herbs for me again." Su Ming threw the basket towards the little monkey baring its teeth at the mouth of the cave, then continued trying to create the pills. The little monkey caught the basket and grinned before running out. Days passed, but there were only failures upon failures. Another half a month passed by. During this day, as Su Ming stood in front of the cauldron with his hair in a mess, he held 2 herbs in his hands. They were both red in color. One of them had 6 petals, and the other 5 petals. Which one should I use? Su Ming knew he did not have much time to think, so he grit his teeth and made his decision. Chapter 11. Blood Boiling. I might as well try everything. Su Ming grit his teeth and threw the flower with 6 petals into the stone cauldron. The herb with 6 petals was the one he found from the mud. It was the one that gave off a scent that seemed to make blood boil. The moment the herb touched the medicinal concoction in the cauldron, Su Ming saw a red, alluring light from within it. He did not cover the cauldron with a lid, but chose to step forward and walk around the cauldron. He selected a few of the ravines that still had the liquid fire flowing down like a stream and jammed the horn horizontally in their paths to stop the flow temporarily, making it easier for him to control the fire. The ravines on the ground have increased since a month ago, and most of them were covered in horizontal marks that looked like scars. This was a method Su Ming invented to control the fire after a month of trial and error. Su Ming was incredibly nervous. Almost all of his attention was on the barren cauldron he made. According to his observations in the past month, the place he was standing was safe for the next hour, so he did not need to care about anything else. Time passed by, and as soon as the hour was up, Su Ming immediately retreated from the place. Not long after he left the place, a huge blast of fire erupted from the ground. As the fire continued bursting forth, Su Ming was also sweating like a river as he stood not too far away from the source of the fire. But he kept his gaze on the cauldron. From the experience he had accumulated a month ago, he knew that there was still 14 to 18 hours left before he could see the results. During this time, he would need to adjust the strength of the flames according to the changes with the medicinal concoction, and he especially needed to put the lid on the cauldron at the final moments of making the medicine pills so that the heat within the cauldron will increase to incredible levels and the heat will gather to create the medicinal pills. He had been repeating this act numerous times in the past month. It could even be said that he was already used to it by now. 2 hours, 4 hours passed by. Slowly, the cauldron started letting out a red mist. The mist had no smell, but as the strange light shone, it made Su Ming's blood boil when he looked at it. During this time, he adjusted the strength of the fire a few times, and he did so until it turned dark outside. Su Ming's eyes were red and bloodshot. He had used almost the entire day on creating the medicinal pills, and if everything had been working well so far, then there was only one final step left. Through the red mist, Su Ming could see that there was not much liquid left within the cauldron, and it was bubbling inside. When each bubble burst, the red mist would rise from within. It's almost done. After numerous failures, Su Ming's eyes lit up. Without any hesitation, he grabbed the lid by his side and covered the cauldron. The moment he closed the cauldron, a low rumbling sound could be heard echoing within the cave. It all depends on luck now. Once he covered the cauldron, Su Ming let out a huge breath and retreated a few steps before sitting down with his legs crossed. He closed his eyes and rested. He knew that he had done everything that he could, and success depended entirely on luck now. 2 hours went by. The roaring sound from within the cauldron increased exponentially and continued 9 times before it gradually became quiet. There was no longer any sound beside the fire underneath the cauldron. Su Ming did not open his eyes but chose instead to continue resting and wait. It was not until when the next eruption was about to start after a short period of time and when the fire underneath the cauldron began growing weaker that Su Ming opened his eyes and grabbed some heat-resistant herbs in his right hand before moving forward and pushing the lid on the cauldron away. The moment the lid was opened, a red wave of heat rushed into his face, but Su Ming was already prepared. The instant he opened the lid, he moved backwards. He waited until the red wave of heat dispersed, then with his heart beating in trepidation and excitement, he moved forward slowly and looked into the cauldron. With just a glance, Su Ming began laughing loudly. Right at the very bottom of the cauldron were 3 red medicinal pills. He retrieved the pills carefully, then sat by the side in excitement as he kept looking at the very mysterious object he had only seen in his memories. Su Ming loved the little round pills, and he even brought them to his nose to smell them. But instead of a medicinal scent, they emitted a faint stench of blood. The pill was also abnormally fragile. If Su Ming used a bit more strength, the pills would crumble into dust, but Su Ming did not care much about that. 1 month has gone by, and I've finally managed to make it once. The more Su Ming looked at it, the happier he was, and as he was about to pop one into his mouth, he hesitated. Su Ming forcefully quelled his excitement. In his mind, he saw the odd scene when he was picking the red herb with 6 petals. If this herb was the key to creating these pills, then I wonder whether the other one can do it as well. Su Ming placed the 3 pills at a safe location, then took out the red herb with 5 petals. There was a moment of silence before Su Ming made up his mind. Once he took note of the time, he closed his eyes and meditated. He started moving the blood in his veins all over his body to recover from fatigue. The little monkey returned at midnight, and as it climbed into the cave its face was seemingly intoxicated as it sniffed its right claw. It did not bother Su Ming, but chose to lie down in a place that was not too hot. It had already gotten used to this place over the past month. Yet even though it was lying down, it still kept sniffing at its right claw, and the intoxicated look became more visible on its face. It started cackling as it remembered something. It was not until the next morning before Su Ming opened his eyes and moved his body. The fatigue he felt on the previous day was completely gone. With his stamina recovered and his body was almost overflowing with it, Su Ming took the herb with 5 petals and continued with the quenching process. After a few days, Su Ming stepped out of the fire cavern, since he had not left for quite a few days. When he saw the sun, he felt its glare on his eyes. He was already used to the red glare of the fires within the fire cave, and now that he looked once more at the brightness from the sun, he was a little unused to it. As he stood there breathing in fresh air, Su Ming waited for his eyes to adjust to the brightness of the sun, then carefully surveyed his surroundings before climbing down. He was quick as he did so, and he remained alert of his surroundings. With the little monkey keeping watch as well, they did not encounter any dangers and made it down the mountain safely. They found a river that let out hot steam at the feet of the mountain. Su Ming took off his clothes and soaked himself in the water, feeling the fatigue that had accumulated in his body disappearing. He and Xiao Hong hurriedly left the river reluctantly. He had much more important things to do. Su Ming and Xiao Hong traveled with blinding speed in the forest. After covering some distance, Su Ming caught some terrifying-looking beasts in his hands. There were also some in the little monkey's claws. At a slightly more remote corner in the forest, Su Ming took a glance at the 4 tied-up beasts roaring at him, then ignored them and took out 2 small bottles from his bosom. Within the 2 bottles were 2 types of pills. One of them was red and slightly terrifying to look at, while the other was green with a faint medicinal smell traveling to his nostrils. With just a whiff, he felt refreshed. The green pill was the one Su Ming made a few days ago using the herb with 5 petals. Scattering dust. If I follow my instincts, the green one is scattering dust, Then what on earth is the red pill? Su Ming narrowed his eyes. There were 3 pills each in the bottles. He took one of each out and looked at the beasts before moving towards them. Once he fed the 2 pills to 2 different beasts, Su Ming retreated a few steps back and observed them nervously. Even the little monkey was affected by his mood and grew nervous. He waited for a long time, but there were no changes within the 2 beasts that consumed the pills. They were still hissing and roaring at Su Ming, their faces contorted in rage. Su Ming frowned. He waited for a bit longer, but nothing happened. How could this be? Logically speaking, something must have happened, but at least it's not poisonous. Could it be, this isn't to be consumed, but to be used externally? Once Su Ming got the idea, he took out the horn and went to the other 2 beasts that did not take the medicine, then cut open 2 small wounds on their bodies so that blood flowed out. The little monkey quickly followed behind him to watch. Su Ming then took another 2 pills from the bottle and placed it on their wounds. At that moment, something happened. The moment the red pill touched the wound on the creature's body, within just a few seconds, its entire body started trembling furiously and it turned into a pool of blood. Before the blood could even fall onto the ground, it burst into flames and turned into red mist. The little beast did not even have time to scream. All of this happened in an instant, and it happened so quickly Su Ming let out a cry of alarm before retreating quickly. The little monkey was also shocked and let out whimpers of alarm as it retreated hastily. Su Ming took in a sharp breath and his eyes were filled with terror. He did not expect that the red pill he made would have such shocking effects. When the red mist disappeared in the air, there was only a pile of purplish red bones left on the ground. It was a terrifying sight to behold. While the other creatures were very close to the beast just now, they were not affected, but it was clear that they were frightened by it. Su Ming's breathing was erratic and quick. After a long while, he looked at the bottle containing the red pill. There was only one left, but that pill alone was enough to make him think that it was a bloodthirsty item. There are no effects if it was consumed, but if it comes into contact with blood, then death is assured. Since I was the one who made this, then it will be named scattering blood. Su Ming murmured. He forced his fears to go away and put away the pill carefully. He had a feeling that this object could very well be used as a weapon in the future. Then this green pill should be the real scattering dust. Just what are its effects though? Su Ming fell momentarily silent, then his gaze fell upon the little beast that was still completely fine even though the pill had melted into its wound. Chapter 12. Su Ming's Wrath. Su Ming thought for a long time but he still could not figure out the effects of scattering dust. In the memories he obtained, he only acquired the methods to make the pills, not their effects. Su Ming only left the place with the slightest bit of hesitation when the sun was at its highest in the sky. They ran back to the place where he had performed the quenching. The little monkey did not stay long. It ran outside as soon as it came back to the cave. Su Ming felt the breeze on his skin as he leaned against the wall of the mountain. In his hands were the green pills and he began thinking as he held them in his hand. Just what is its use? Neither consuming the pill nor applying it externally worked. He frowned. He finally managed to make the pills but he could not determine their effects. It made Su Ming feel as if the past month had been a waste. He stared at the pills and made his decision. I'll just have to try it on my own. Let's see what happens once I swallow it. Su Ming was the decisive sort. Once he made a decision, he never hesitated. He quickly placed the scattering dust pill in his hand into his mouth. The pill immediately melted once it touched his tongue. A strong medicinal taste filled his mouth and turned into a strong wave of heat that flowed into all parts of his body. It disappeared soon however, and Su Ming did not feel much from it. Su Ming was stunned. He sat down hurriedly and meditated, trying to solidify the blood in his veins. However, it was to no avail. It was no different than before. He still felt that there was not enough blood in his body. He pulled at his hair, frustrated. This was the first time he truly felt that he had wasted the past month. Impossible, there must be some other use for it. Su Ming was disappointed but he did not give up. Yet, no matter how much he pondered about it, he could not find any clues. The only thing he could do was sigh and laugh bitterly. After a while, the little monkey returned and approached Su Ming. It jumped around for a while before throwing some fruits in front of him, then leaving once more. Su Ming sighed. He was hungry, so he picked up one of the fruits and began thinking as he ate. 1, 2, 3. Before he knew it, Su Ming let out a burp and spat out the core. He stroked his belly and started thinking again. His gaze traveled to the fruits left on the ground, and just as he was about to look away, it struck him. I'm full. What? Su Ming stared at the fruits and immediately began counting the cores he spat on the ground. There were 15 in total. He felt that he had just come across something important. His heart pounded in excitement. I've always loved eating this fruit and Xiao Hong has always picked them for me, but I don't like eating too much of it in one go. At the same time, I'm usually only half full even after eating 10 of them, but just now, I only ate 15 of them and I'm already full. Is it because my appetite has decreased? Or perhaps, it has something to do with this. Su Ming licked his lips. He remembered that he had taken a scattering dust pill earlier on. Perhaps scattering dust is actually a pill that can replace food, or perhaps, scattering dust can increase the effects of other things. Su Ming felt his heart pounding. He took a deep breath. He had been thinking carefully and exhaustively about the effects of the pill but had obtained no clues. Now that he had stumbled onto something, he was going to pursue it no matter how ridiculous it may seem. He immediately crawled back into the little hole which he used for the sole purpose of quenching herbs. He remembered that he still had a little bit of dark dragon saliva left. This was a rare item. It was impossible to obtain it without rain and he had been reluctant to drink what little amount he had left. He quickly ventured into the cave. Su Ming took out the bottle that contained the few drops of dark dragon saliva left from the basket. He then swallowed it all in one gulp without hesitation. Su Ming was extremely familiar with dark dragon saliva. With just a few drops, he immediately felt the faint traces of coldness from the liquid traveling to all parts of his body before seeping into his blood. The cold sensation brought upon by dark dragon saliva suddenly increased a little, at least by 1-fold. It may not seem much, but Su Ming could really feel it. As the coldness became one with his blood, it felt like his blood started to boil. It caused the 4 manifested blood veins to glow a bloody red as he controlled the flow of blood in his body. After a long while, Su Ming opened his eyes and let out a shaky breath. His eyes were filled with happiness and excitement. I knew it. There are no effects if scattering dust is taken alone, but if taken with other objects, then the effects of those objects will increase. It seems like a simple effect, but it's really quite extraordinary. Su Ming felt his spirits lift up. The process of creating scattering dust was now a huge motivation for him. There were 15 tiny holes on the door which gave me the methods to create scattering dust. It must be for me to place 15 of these pills in there, but I don't even have enough for myself now. Su Ming fell silent. Then, he let out a string of murmurs slowly after a brief period of hesitation. Once he made up his mind, he immediately went to the barren cauldron and began processing the other herbs with the quenching process. Besides processing the herbs, he also made the little monkey continue searching for the herbs his grandfather would take away in huge bundles. Then, using the method in his tribe, he mashed the herbs and turned them into liquid before drinking it. With the help of scattering dust, his training speed grew faster. 2 months had passed by. Su Ming barely left the cave during those 2 months. The fire cavern had practically become his second home. Since the location could not be easily discovered, Su Ming felt at ease training there. Within those 2 months, he had prepared a lot of scattering dust. With the help of the medicinal concoction which helped increase his blood rate, he gradually managed to manifest the 5th blood vein on his body. The 6th blood vein too, had begun appearing vaguely on his body. If this continued, then it would manifest very soon. Winter had already arrived outside. The other mountains were covered by snow except Black Flame Mountain. Snow would melt before it could even touch the surface of the mountain. Due to this, the mountain was surrounded by a thick layer of fog. It was a strange sight to see from afar. If an outsider saw it for the first time, the mountain would definitely pique his or her interest. Su Ming grew up there, so the strange sights of the mountain were nothing new to him. That day, Su Ming sat down with his legs crossed and the blood-red glow was incredibly strong within his body. The 5 blood veins crawled all over his body as if they possessed life. It was a shocking sight to behold. As the blood-red glow kept spreading around his body, sweat accumulated all over Su Ming's body. His body trembled, but his face was filled with determination. This was his 3rd attempt at manifesting the 6th blood vein during the past half a month. Once he managed to do it, he would successfully become a berserker at the 2nd level in the blood solidification realm. More importantly, he would be able to use the very first berserker art. It was one that belonged only to their tribe, an art known as Spirit Devourer. The Spirit Devourer was not a skill that could be used without preparation. Some fresh animal carcasses would be required. By gathering the berserker blood in their bodies, practitioners could sense the spirit of the deceased animal and bring it out to increase their own strength temporarily. Only after they have mastered this particular skill would they be known as a berserker. They would then be different from the other members of the tribe. They would be much stronger. After a long while, Su Ming's body continued to tremble. The bloody glow surrounding his body gradually disappeared, and the 5 blood veins on his skin also sank into his body once more. The solidification of the 6th blood vein had failed once again. Su Ming let out a deep breath. After a moment of silence, he mixed some medicinal concoction with scattering dust and drank it before continuing with his training. Another month passed by. The entire Dark Dragon Mountain was covered by a thick layer of snow. The fog surrounding Black Flame Mountain had also grown thicker. Even the heat seemed to disappear in the weather. The year's coldest season was about to arrive. However, for Su Ming, this was the most important moment. His diligence in training coupled with his supply of herbs and scattering dust increased his training speed exponentially in the blood solidification realm. The 6th blood vein had appeared, and it was at a critical moment of manifestation. The little monkey also refused to go out in winter. Its entire body was red, and that made it extremely eye-catching in the snow. Even if it was not winter, it would have to lay low. It squatted down beside Su Ming and yawned as it watched him. All of a sudden, the little monkey lifted its head. Its eyes were filled with a fierce glare and its ears twitched. Faint voices traveled into the cavern from the outside. "You Kai, are you sure sky stone grows here? We've been searching this place for half a day and we still can't find any. Are you sure you got the right information?" It was a cold voice, and the little monkey quivered the moment it heard it. "It can't be. I remember seeing shrubs of the plant, that's why I cast a berserker art to hide it. It should have fully matured by now. The other members of the tribe come here often to collect herbs. They should be able to identify my spells." The voice that answered was sharp. "Then hurry up. If Sky Stone is really here, then I'll be able to break through the 3rd level soon and reach the 4th level. As for you, you should be able to reach the 3rd level. Don't be in such a hurry. It should be here. I can feel the presence of my spell. If you can reach the 4th level, then you will be able to join the Black Mountains hunting team. I heard that the elder made a new rule that says anyone can keep their own game this time." Their voices were getting closer and sounded like they were right outside. The little monkey was so nervous it did not dare to breathe. It could feel that the 2 people outside posed a serious threat. It turned back to look at Su Ming multiple times, but Su Ming still had his eyes shut. His body was trembling slightly, and the bloody glow on his body was becoming stronger. The 6th blood vein seemed to show signs of complete manifestation as well. Yet, at that very moment, found it. Look, there's a small hole here. It's Sky Stone. As for the hole, this was once the land of the Fire Berserker tribe. There's hot air around the hole. It should be empty. Since we're already here, we might as well go in and have a look. It's not as if a simple hole can stop me." Their voices traveled into the cave, and their words made the little monkey's face grow pale. It gritted its teeth and looked back at Su Ming for a long period of time. Then, it bared its teeth and rushed out the little hole. Immediately, sounds of delight could be heard from the outside. "It's a fire ape, and a baby at that, ha. This must be its refuge from the cold. Catch it. Its blood can help me replenish my blood, and I'll offer its fur to the elder." Mournful cries could be heard after that, and then the voices gradually disappeared. However, within the cave, Su Ming's face had contorted in anger and he shook furiously. "You asked for this." Su Ming lifted his head and roared in rage. Chapter 13. Killing Motive. The moment Su Ming lifted his head, his eyes were bloodshot. His entire body glowed madly with a blood-red light, and it lit up the entire fire cavern. His entire body kept trembling. As the blood moved around his body, his heart pounded faster and faster as if it was going to break his chest. It only served to make his face even more twisted. He was at an important moment in his training, so he was unable to stop abruptly. Nonetheless, he knew and clearly heard everything that had happened earlier. He saw with his own eyes the little monkey running out to lure the two outsiders to protect him. Su Ming had never been that mad before. The little monkey was his only friend in the forest. Over the years, he had come to treat the little one like family. The madness within his eyes caused the veins from Su Ming's body to pop out and blazing sounds to reverberate throughout his body. The 5 blood veins that manifested on his body were now giving off a piercing glow. Within the red glow was the 6th blood vein, which was on the verge of completely manifesting itself. It looked like it was on the verge of breaking out of its cocoon. This damned 2nd level, Su Ming roared. He had been gentle in his previous attempts to manifest that blood vein. Even if he was not successful, there were no serious repercussions. However, the little monkey's life was now in danger, and Su Ming grew more anxious with every passing second. He gave everything he had and controlled the blood in his veins, forcing them to move in the way they should as a berserker practitioner. He focused all of his blood towards the 6th blood vein. There was a loud boom and Su Ming coughed up blood. His entire body trembled as his face turned pale. Such a reckless move was taboo for berserker practitioners. It was important for them to arrive at each new rank smoothly and steadily. They could not march forward recklessly. The booming sound was not as loud to the outside world, but Su Ming felt like the world had crashed in his head. The sound kept echoing itself. Damn it! Su Ming glared at the entrance to the cave. It was as if he could still see the little monkey's helplessness, fear and resolution. There was no time for hesitation. Su Ming once again controlled the blood in his entire body and attempted to break through for the 2nd time. More blood came out of his mouth and trickled down his chin onto the floor. The 3rd time, 4th time, 5th time. During his 5th attempt, Su Ming coughed out a huge mouthful of blood. His face became completely ashen, but on his face was also a strong intent to kill. With all that blood on his face, Su Ming looked horrifying. He immediately picked himself up, and the moment he stood up, there was a loud bang within his body. The 6th blood vein had completely manifested itself. As the 6th blood vein formed completely, a totally different aura compared to the 1st level of the blood solidification realm erupted from within Su Ming's body. There was no wind, but the aura blew his hair, and the 6th blood vein moved rapidly on his skin as if it was alive. It was the 2nd level of the blood solidification realm. Without waiting for his body to get used to the 2nd level, Su Ming ran at a speed faster than he previously could, and his speed had increased by at least 1-fold. He grabbed the bow and horn by his side, and in a blink of an eye, he disappeared. He quickly crawled out of the small hole. When he arrived outside, it was snowing heavily and the sun was about to set. It was already dusk outside. One of them is a 2nd level in the blood solidification realm, the other in the 3rd level. Su Ming's eyes were bloodshot and cold. No matter how strong his enemies were, Su Ming felt no fear. He only felt a strong urge to kill. He had already forgotten what fear felt like. The moment the little monkey was captured, the 2 berserkers from Black Mountain tribe became his mortal enemies. Su Ming would have to be dead if they did not die by his hands. It did not matter if he was rushing into fire. It had nothing to do with recklessness. Instead, it was a matter of survival. If the fire did not cease to burn, then he would in turn be burnt to ashes. Su Ming did not hesitate. He ran forward at full speed. He was a member of the berserker tribe. He had been playing and collecting herbs around the mountains since he was young. He was familiar with these parts of the land and was even better at tracking for answers around the place. As he ran, he kept his eyes on the ground. He wiped the blood away from the corners of his mouth and his hands. After a while, he saw some messy-looking tracks on the dried leaves ahead. He grabbed some broken twigs and looked at them. The killing intent in his eyes grew even stronger. He threw away the twigs and changed his direction. Su Ming continued to run at full speed and maximized his body's full potential. On the way, he found a lot other traces and even a pool of blood. There were some traces of red fur in the pool of blood. It was the little monkeys. However, the blood was already beginning to dry up, a clear sign that the two people caught the little monkey there and had left for quite some time. I can't catch up. Su Ming's eyes darkened. He clenched his fists, and his eyes were filled with anger. They're from the Black Mountain tribe, so surely they'll return to their tribe. If that's the case, there's still a shortcut from here to the Black Mountain tribe. Su Ming turned around and leapt forward, lightly disappearing into the snow-covered forest. Faster. Su Ming ran ahead quickly like he was flying through the forest. Yet, he still felt his speed was too slow. As he traveled, he left his footprints on the snow. Just as he was about to take another leap forward, the snow before him flew up from the ground. A small creature that looked like a fox but was entirely covered in white fur and had the horns of a deer leapt from the snow. Its speed was so quick it almost reached Su Ming in an instant. Mink raccoon. Su Ming did not slow down. When the little creature jumped out from its hiding place, he swung his right fist towards it. Previously, Su Ming's strength would not have been enough to kill a wild beast with just one punch. However, he was now a berserker in the second level of the blood solidification realm. He already had 6 blood veins manifested and he was controlled by an almost boundless amount of bloodlust. This caused not just his speed but also his strength to increase exponentially. The punch landed squarely on the mink raccoon's body and it let out a cry. It narrowed its eyes, wanting to change its course midair, but Su Ming rushed forward and cut the creature apart with the horn in his left hand. He had equipped himself with it sometime during the encounter. Fresh blood poured out of its wounds. The little creature struggled and cried in the snow. Its blood stained the snow a bloody shade of crimson. It was a clean cut. Su Ming looked at the dead mink raccoon and lowered his body. He raised his right hand as he took in a deep breath. After that, he began controlling his blood. His body emitted a red light as if it had fused together with the blood on the ground. The 6 blood veins manifested themselves on Su Ming's body. He placed his right hand slowly on the dead creature and a strange glow appeared in his eyes. One of the blood veins on his body began to twist around oddly as if it came to life. It crawled along his right arm to his palm and into the little creature's body. Suddenly, the dead carcass began shaking. Its fur fell off and its body began withering rapidly. Within the blink of an eye, it turned into bones. At the same moment, wisps of white mist rose from its body to create an image of its former self. But it was a vague image, like it would disappear as soon as the wind blew. This was the first time Su Ming had cast the Spirit Devourer. According to the information he obtained about the spell, he would usually need to refine the spirit first before devouring it. However, Su Ming did not have the time. He opened his mouth and breathed in the spirit form of the mink raccoon. Su Ming's body trembled. He could feel that he had just obtained additional strength, but it was also rapidly disappearing. It would not be long before it disappeared completely and his strength would return to normal. Su Ming did not linger. He immediately rushed forth. This time, his speed was slightly faster than before and it was increasing. He became more and more like the wind. As the wind blew past his ears, there was only one thought in Su Ming's head. He had to catch up to the other party, stop them and then save the little monkey. As for the method, he was not a reckless person to begin with, so he already had a plan. An hour later, the additional strength Su Ming obtained disappeared, but it allowed him to cover more distance. He had already left Black Flame Mountain and was near the Black Mountain tribe. He was at a small hill which looked like a slope. If he stood there, he could see quite far ahead and his peripheral vision would also increase. As he was near his destination, Su Ming's eyes became fierce. He kept his gaze on Black Flame Mountain and very soon, he saw his targets. 2 figures appeared and one of them was holding onto a motionless Xiao Hong. Su Ming stood there and took out a small bottle with his right hand. There was a red pill within the bottle. Once he made sure there was no fresh blood on his hands, Su Ming took the pill out and held it in his hand. The pill was his trump card. He stabilized his breathing and took out his bow. His eyes were calm, almost like dead water. The 2 people were approaching him, with only a few miles between them. They would have seen him if they paid attention. The 2 people were big and burly. They looked strong. The man holding onto the little monkey was only wearing a thin piece of hide even though it was winter. His upper body was bare. There was white mist coming off his body as if he was dispersing the cold with the energy emitted from his blood. Su Ming only cast him a glance before focusing on the other person. He was also big in build with several long spears slung over his back. He was slightly shorter than his companion. However, Su Ming could feel that his chi was much stronger than his companion and much stronger than his own. This person was powerful. Su Ming narrowed his eyes and lifted his bow before pointing it towards the second man. Just as Su Ming looked at the person, the man also saw Su Ming. His eyes became cold and fierce. Chapter 14. The Fallen Berserker. It's a berserker from another tribe and he's alone. Judging by his chi, he should only be at the second level of the blood solidification realm. It'll be easy to kill him. We're also near the tribe and we're going up 2 against 1. There's no need for us to be afraid of him. Nevertheless, since this person has come to challenge us, he must have some tricks up his sleeve. But with my power as a 3rd level berserker, it'll be fine. The slightly shorter 3rd level berserker from the Black Mountain tribe smiled fiercely. He was not at all worried about Su Ming. In his view, the difference between them was too big. Su Ming was also frail looking, so he did not look as if he posed a threat. More importantly, besides the Wind Stream tribe, if any of the Black Mountain tribe members saw a person from another tribe wandering around alone, they would definitely kill the person without mercy. There was no room for negotiation. This was a world where the strong preyed on the weak. If Xiao Hong had not ventured out to lure them away, they would have entered the cave, killed Su Ming and taken his head back to the tribe for rewards. "You Kai, I'll kill him. Wait here." As he spoke, the big man leapt forward like a tiger, closing the gap between him and Su Ming in just a few breaths. Yu Kai, the man holding onto the little monkey, did not object. He knew that if he killed a berserker from another tribe and brought his head back to the tribe, he would receive rewards. However, he did not dare snatch away his companion's achievements. "It's fine. That man is also at the 2nd level like me. If we fight, then we'll be wasting some time. If he goes, then he'll definitely be able to kill him. Maybe I'll even get to share some of his rewards." To Yu Kai, this was a meaningless battle. His eyes were filled with a cruel anticipation, as if he could see what would happen next. He was getting excited by the prospect of spilling blood. The 3rd level berserker who was getting nearer to Su Ming also had a similar thought. He jumped forward and quickly closed the distance. Very soon, there was not even 1,000 feet between them. 800 feet, 700 feet, and then 600 feet. As he got closer, the man saw Su Ming's face clearly. He let out a roar as he grinned fiercely. His roar alone caused the snow around him to quake and toss into the air. They exploded in a loud bang, creating a layer of white mist which blinded their sights. At that moment, the man grabbed a long spear from his back with his right hand. He threw it with all his strength at Su Ming, who was standing more than 600 feet away from him. A sharp and piercing sound sliced through the air. Su Ming felt a sharp and fierce aura coming straight at him. Without thinking, he stepped aside and a whistling sound whipped by his ear. The long spear flew past and just missed him by a hair's breadth. The man did not approach to check his kill once he threw the spear. Instead, dark wisps of air surrounded his legs, increasing his traveling speed instantly by a dozen-fold. Very soon the distance between them was cut down from 600 feet to 300 feet. Die. The man raised his right hand and took out a second spear. Just as he was about to throw it, the mist created by snow scattered. This allowed some of Su Ming's field of vision to return. As it did, an arrow pierced through the snow and rushed towards the man like a flash of lightning. The man laughed. He raised the spear in his right hand and knocked down the arrow easily. With a crash, the arrow broke into pieces. However, at the same time, whistling sounds whipped through the air again and another 3 arrows came straight towards him. The arrows were too quick and the angle at which they traveled made it extremely difficult to dodge. It was becoming problematic for him. It made the man frown, but he still scoffed at them and let out a huge blast of dark air underneath his feet. It quickly surrounded his entire body like mist. As the 3 arrows approached him, they melted into a pool of black water when they touched the black mist. Even so, much of the black mist had dispersed, causing the man's body to be exposed. "You're only at the second level of the blood solidification realm and you dare oppose me." The man took a leap and the distance between them had shortened again, and this time, to 200 feet. Su Ming's face was pale but he held his ground. There were no traces of anxiety within his eyes, just the same chilling calmness. He took out a few more arrows and fired them rapidly at the man. Once, twice, thrice and with incredible speed, he fired 5 arrows in succession. The 5 arrows practically formed a straight line and the whistling sound they caused as they sliced through the air made it seem as if they had a lot of power. They reached the man almost immediately. When he saw it, he frowned slightly. In their tribe, there were few who could use bows like that. The 5 connected. The man raised the spear in his right hand and swung it against the first arrow. There was a loud crash and the spear broke along with the first arrow. The second arrow followed quickly. The man let out a low growl and made the black mist surround his body, causing the second arrow to melt as they touched it. The third arrow approached like lightning but the man dodged it by stepping aside. He was quickly chased by the fourth arrow. The man growled and clenched his right fist with a fierce expression. Then he swung it at the arrow. As the arrow broke, a wound appeared on his right hand. At that moment, the fifth arrow followed closely like a shadow. The man wanted to dodge it but the arrow managed to leave behind a wound on his shoulder as it whistled by him. Fresh blood immediately poured out of his wound. "I will tear your head off from your shoulders." The man was not seriously wounded. He only had small wounds and they were considered inconsequential to the members of the Berserker tribe. However, to the man, it was different. He grinned fiercely and traveled another 100 feet closer to Su Ming. He was already victorious. This was a battle that posed no danger to him. He was at most only slightly bothered by the arrows. As for Yu Kai, he licked his lips from where he stood. He loved watching such bloody scenes. They served to make him feel excited. Just as the man was about to take another step, Su Ming approached him. His face was pale but his eyes were still cold and calm. He then did something that momentarily shocked the man and Yu Kai. He gave up on using his bow and arrow but chose instead to use his fists to face the man. No one realized that within Su Ming's right hand was the powder of the red pill that he had crushed. "You asked for it." The man continued closing their distance and within the blink of an eye, they were only dozens of feet away from each other. Then it turned into 30 feet, 20 feet and 10 feet. The man gathered all the power of his chi in his right fist and swung it against Su Ming's head. If he had hit it, Su Ming would have undoubtedly died. But right at that moment, Su Ming lifted his head. The coldness in his eyes was gone and it was replaced with a terrifying killing intent. The strong desire to kill even stunned the man. It was already too late. Just as Su Ming lifted his head, he swung his right hand at the man and as he did so, the red powder spread in the air. Some of them landed on the man's wound on his right fist while some landed on his shoulder wound. The man trembled slightly but there were no blood-curdling screams, no struggles. Right before Su Ming's eyes, he turned into red mist and disappeared into thin air. It was as if he was boiled alive and erased by the laws of nature. A pile of bones without any flesh were all that was left on the ground. When the wind blew past, they crumbled into dust. Among the bone fragments was a strange herb that was black and white in color. It emitted a soft and dim glow. The sudden turn of events stunned Yu Kai, who was standing nearby. He could not accept it. He could not even believe what he just saw. His gaze was empty due to the shock. Then, he saw the fragile-looking boy turn and look at him with cold eyes and an equally cold countenance. He watched as the boy sped towards him. "The fire ape's carcass will be a great supplement. I want it," Su Ming suddenly said as he approached Yu Kai. Yu Kai shivered. As he snapped out of his stupor, he found that he was drenched in cold sweat. Su Ming's words also made him realize that he had forgotten to use the monkey as a hostage. He concluded that Su Ming came just to snatch the monkey away. The moment the idea struck him, he immediately escaped. He still could not fathom how and why his companion died. The chilling sight of his death made him so terrified, he could not accept it. "You're fallen. You're a fallen berserker," Yu Kai screeched as his face turned pale. He was completely overcome by terror. He could not accept it. He was so terrified that his legs were shaking. He did not dare to face Su Ming and thus, used up every ounce of his strength to escape. Su Ming was blocking the way back to the Black Mountain tribe, so Yu Kai could not go back. He could only run towards Black Flame Mountain. Su Ming was about to give chase when he was suddenly hit by a wave of dizziness. He felt like he was completely drained. He shook his head and forced himself to concentrate. He cast a glance at the pile of bones on the ground. This was the first time he had killed someone, but it was not the time for hesitation. He had no choice but to give chase. He quickly cleaned up the place and picked up whatever usable arrows were left. After that, he took away the strange-looking herb from the pile of bones. Su Ming gazed at the direction Yu Kai ran off to, and his eyes filled with killing intent once more. Xiao Hong is still in his hands. I've already killed one of them. So, I might as well kill the other, then the land which I used for quenching will never be found. Su Ming gritted his teeth to bear with the fatigue and chased after him. The two of them ran into the forest. Yu Kai did not even dare look back to see Su Ming. He chose instead to concentrate on fleeing, trying to widen the distance between them. Despite this, if they were to compare their level of familiarity with Dark Dragon Mountain, he could not compare with Su Ming. Besides, his speed was also still inferior to Su Ming's. He may have had a head start, but very soon Su Ming started to catch up to him with all the tracks he left behind. Su Ming gritted his teeth to bear with the fatigue. He kept his gaze focused on the man from the Black Mountain tribe. He knew that the man was scared by his actions. That was why he did not dare engage in battle. It was all part of Su Ming's plans. With the scattering blood, he could kill a person in the blink of an eye and also stun others who saw it. After all, it was something that most people had never seen before. As such, it would terrify them. Su Ming did not chase after him too closely. However, he was constantly blocked by some obstacles along the way, causing the gap to widen every time he was just about to catch up and pounce on the man. Not long after, the obstacles started to make Su Ming hesitate. Chapter 15. Metamorphosis. There was a saying that went like this: if you only have fighting spirit but no physical abilities to support it, in the end, you will still lose. Su Ming had been learning under the elder since he was young. The elder had a lot of scrolls in his house and Su Ming had read almost all of them. There was a lot of knowledge there and he always wanted more. The wisdom left behind by his ancestors had made their way into Su Ming's head gradually as time passed by. However, they never had a chance to shine. As Su Ming was in pursuit of someone's life, the little bits of wisdom that had been residing in his head began to surface. Yu Kai was feeling extremely anxious. He originally thought that he could not escape and had made up his mind to give it his all in an attack of desperation. Yet right before his eyes, he saw the distance between them increasing. Then just as he thought he could escape, the distance between them closed once more and this process kept repeating itself. After this happened a few times, he no longer had any desire to give it his all for a fight to the death. It was hard for him to get into that state of mind anymore. However, in Su Ming's eyes, the berserker from the Black Mountain tribe was just a prey, and a terrified prey at that. As soon as he started feeling the slightest bit of hope, he could slowly tear him apart. Su Ming used this method to wear down Yu Qi's confidence and courage. As the pursuit continued, he would widen the gap and let the other man have the illusion of safety. Su Ming vaguely remembered one of the scrolls saying that once the prey went through a long period of time switching between the state of anxiety and relaxation, its fatigue and suffering would increase exponentially. That sort of torture was enough to destroy one's soul. Su Ming only understood the logic behind it the last time, but when he was giving chase, he slowly began to fully comprehend. The knowledge he had obtained slowly became instincts. He did not even need to do it on purpose, his body moved on its own and brought him the results that he wanted. That day marked the first time Su Ming killed someone and the first time he hunted a human for the purpose of killing him. It was the first time in his life that he was experiencing a change in his personality. Yu Kai, on the other hand, was the only person who would experience the process of Su Ming change. Yu Kai could feel it clearly, but he did not know what caused the change. He only felt his confidence and courage diminishing after the strange scene of his companion's death. They were gradually worn down bit by bit during the chase. In fact, at one point, he no longer had the urge to turn his head back anymore. Although Su Ming was a second-level berserker in the blood solidification realm just like him, he had the feeling that once he turned back he would surely die. If he continued fleeing, he felt that he would have a chance of surviving. He was so afraid that he did not feel his exhaustion building up. This was especially so when he discovered that the young man had disappeared at some point when the distance between them kept increasing. The exhaustion almost made him sink into his knees when he finally realized, but he could not rest. He chose instead to grit his teeth and persevere. Unfortunately, this did not last long. When he saw Su Ming's silhouette appear at the corner of his eye again, the exhaustion he felt immediately increased by tenfold. It almost drove Yu Kai mad. He's a fallen berserker. He's definitely a fallen berserker. Yu Kai felt himself trembling in fear. As he was escaping, he came to a junction. If he turned left, he would have gone into the deeper parts of the forest and left Black Flame Mountain. If he turned right, he would have gone around Black Flame Mountain and gone back to the Black Mountain tribe. Su Ming had known about that junction for a long time. He narrowed his eyes and ignored his own fatigue. He focused all of his energy to his feet, increasing his speed by one explosive burst. He did not give chase, choosing instead to cut through the forest and approach the right turning at the junction. It was clear that he had predicted Yu Qi's choice to travel right. That was why he chose to turn right and close the distance between them. As he rushed forward, Su Ming brought out his bow and shot a few arrows at the direction of the right turning. As the arrows whistled through the air, all of them hit the trees on the right path. The arrowheads buried their way into the stumps and their fletchings even hummed as they vibrated in the air. The humming sound seemed to possess some sort of strange force. As the sound traveled into Yu Qi's ears, he hesitated. Su Ming pursued Yu Kai at full speed once more and attacked with his bow again. Yu Kai let out a hysterical cry and was about to turn right when Su Ming suddenly increased his speed, giving Yu Kai a false impression. He had a feeling that if he ran to the right, Su Ming would most definitely catch up to him. If he escaped to the left, he would then be able to widen the distance between them because Su Ming made the wrong decision. He could still hear the humming sound from the arrows. Yu Kai gritted his teeth and changed his direction, turning left instead. Very soon, he disappeared into the forest. A frightening look crossed Su Ming's eyes amid the fatigue and his lips curled up in a cold smile. Quickly, he pulled out the arrows from the trees and continued pursuing the man from the Black Mountain tribe. If you can control the direction of your enemy's escape, then you can control his body, Su Ming murmured. He remembered reading these words somewhere in one of the beast skin scrolls. He was not able to understand them before, but now he understood what they meant. As he gave chase, time passed by slowly. Very soon, night came and the moon rose up high in the sky. As the moonlight touched the snow on the ground, it reflected a white light which illuminated the forest in a silvery gleam even though it was night time. During the chase, Su Ming had already changed Yu Qi's course of escape 3 times, gradually controlling the other man's body to run in the direction he wanted. He touched the unconscious little monkey lying against his bosom, a gentle expression appearing in his tired and bloodshot eyes. Yu Kai had thrown the little monkey away in the opposite direction during the first time Su Ming forced him to change his course. However, because of that, the distance between them increased. Throwing away the little monkey had worked out for Yu Kai. Su Ming immediately ran towards the little monkey, causing Yu Kai to let out a sigh of relief and his speed increased. In spite of that, it did not last long. Soon after, Yu Kai noticed arrows upon arrows whistling by his side, all coming from behind. This again almost drove Yu Kai mad. The stars in the sky shone brightly like eyes that were looking at the chase in the forest. Yu Kai was already exhausted. His footsteps faltered, but what he felt physically was inconsequential. What mattered most was his mental state. It was already broken. He regretted it. He regretted discovering the little hole. He regretted chasing after the fire ape. All of this would not have happened if he had not done any of it. Before him, there was a forest filled with a variety of plants. Even though it was winter, he still could not see into the deeper parts of the forest. When Yu Kai was still hesitating and contemplating on going into the forest, Su Ming's silhouette appeared at the edge of the forest. He stood there, breathing heavily. Huge amounts of white mist flowed out from his mouth and his eyes were laden with steely coldness. He did not immediately give chase but chose to wait. This place will be the burial ground I give you. If you can step out of here alive even with such exhaustion, you can count yourself extremely lucky. Su Ming's muttered once his breathing began to even out. Just as he finished speaking, a terrifying cry traveled across the forest in the quiet of the night. The cry echoed in the forest, causing a shiver to travel down the spines of all who heard it. After a while, the cry gradually grew weaker before finally turning into a faint moan. Su Ming walked towards the direction of the voice in solemn silence. He walked into the forest slowly with each step carefully calculated. Every time he took a few steps forward, he would look around before choosing to either retreat, go around a certain place or leap forward. It was the hunting spot for the Dark Mountain tribe. That area of the forest was filled with traps and the locations of the traps were unknown to all except the members of the Dark Mountain tribe. Even Su Ming only knew the locations of most of the traps, not all of them. If Yu Kai had been in perfect condition when he went in, he might have been able to get out alive. However, due to the condition he was in, he sealed his fate once he stepped into the place. It was the same as stepping into his own death trap. Su Ming walked forward carefully. The moans gradually became weaker as they traveled to his ears. As Su Ming walked forward slowly, he saw that Yu Kai was impaled to a tree by a line of sharpened and thick wooden spikes, the size of adult men. His entire body was drenched in his own blood, but he was not dead yet. He was still shivering and moaning weakly. Su Ming stepped forward quietly, and once he was by Yu Chi's side, he looked at him. After a long while, he took out his horn and sliced Yu Chi's throat. Yu Kai struggled furiously for a few moments before breathing his last. Before his eyes lost their life, they were focused on Su Ming and filled with hatred. Su Ming was silent. He cut through the trap's ropes and took away whatever remained on Yu Chi's corpse. He brought out the small amount of scattering blood powder he had left and turned the corpse into a pile of bones. He then turned it into dust by touching it. He turned around silently and walked out of the forest. Once he was out, he looked at the moon in the sky with uncertainty in his gaze. It was the second time he killed someone. He could not describe how he felt. There was nervousness, fear, uncertainty. After a long while, he let out a sigh. The Black Mountain tribe was from the same denomination as the Dark Mountain tribe, but after so many years, they had turned into mortal enemies. If one of the tribes became stronger, the other would have been faced with the threat of being massacred. All of the men would have been killed and the women would have been taken away to help with the reproduction of the tribe. It was a good thing that this had not happened. For many years, the elders of both tribes had been on the same level. They would not easily incite war. He took a deep breath. Fatigue took over Su Ming's entire body. He gritted his teeth and dragged his exhausted body far, far away. When dawn arrived and the sun rose, Su Ming returned to the place he used for the quenching of herbs in Black Flame Mountain. His face was a sickly yellow. He crawled into the cave, and once he was inside, he fell to the side and fainted. Chapter 16. Elder, brother, can you hear me? In his dreams, he heard that familiar, sad and lonely voice once more as it echoed in his head. The voice remained in his head for a long time. His unconscious body trembled lightly as if he was struggling. Brother, I'm waiting for you. As the calls grew stronger, Su Ming was jolted awake from his sleep. His gaze was unfocused as he stared at the wall before him and let his mind wander. His thoughts were interrupted by excited screeches. He turned his head and saw Xiao Hong pouncing on him happily. Then it started climbing all over his body. Xiao Hong woke up much earlier. It was only in a state of unconsciousness before and was not heavily injured. Once it woke up, it kept its gaze focused on Su Ming, waiting anxiously for him to wake up. When Su Ming woke up, it was out of its mind with joy. Su Ming smiled as he looked at the little monkey, but his smile was laced with uncertainty. It was the second time that he had the dream. He took a deep breath. Su Ming shook his head, forcing himself not to think about the strange dream anymore. He chose instead to look at the perfectly normal-looking black stone hanging off his neck. He touched the stone, and his eyes gradually became clear of doubt. He already had first-hand experience of the changes the black stone brought upon him. The creation of scattering dust had increased his training speed by leaps and bounds. The red pill was also created by accident, allowing Su Ming to obtain complete control and gain the upper hand in a battle between life and death. I'll still need to create more pills. I saw a door at that strange place, but there were 15 small holes on the door. I did not have enough pills last time, that's why I was hesitating. But now, I really want to know just what will happen to the door once I put in 15 scattering dusts, Su Ming muttered lowly under his breath. I'll need to make more scattering blood. These pills will be my trump card. Also, I'll need to go back to the tribe. I haven't gone back for quite some time. The elder has been stuck at the 9th level for many years as well. Perhaps scattering dust can help. Su Ming stood up and moved his limbs. Most of the fatigue in his body was gone by then. He concentrated on making the pills again and continued with the refinement of the blood in his veins. There were some parts of his body that felt a bit sluggish as blood tried to circulate through them. It was not as smooth as before, and Su Ming believed that it was a wound left behind when he tried to break through the first level of the blood solidification realm. He would not be able to heal the wound within a short period of time. Within the same month, Su Ming ventured out of the cave a few times. He also had the little monkey help him collect herbs. Su Ming even went out specially to pick 2 of the red herbs required for scattering blood. He wanted to pick more, but sensing danger, he decided not to be greedy. Using the vast amounts of herbs he collected, Su Ming began refining his qi in his blood while also using the herbs to create the medicinal pills he wanted the past month. The muffled sounds of pills being created echoed throughout the cave. It was a month later and the sky was still dark with only faint traces of light. Su Ming gave the little monkey a few instructions and left the mountain alone. Then, he disappeared into the forest. Su Ming, who had arrived at the 2nd level of the blood solidification realm, traveled quickly within the forest. He ran across the icy plains like a flash of light. Before noon, he had already left the forest and was outside the dark mountain tribe settlement. As he looked at the settlement, a smile appeared across his face. I haven't been back for quite some time. Su Ming walked towards it. Everything was normal. Many children were playing around and some of the tribe members were sparring against each other. Su Ming's return attracted some of the tribe members' attention. He had been gone for a long time, after all. They came out and greeted him with smiles on their faces. Su Ming, you're finally back. Where did you go? Su Ming stroked a child's head, and just as he was about to leave to the elder's house, an excited voice rang out from behind him. He turned around and looked. The person who spoke was a big and well-built man, but he had a slight baby face. It was a clear sign that he was still young. That person was Lei Chen. What? Su Ming glanced at Lei Chen and could feel that the qi in his body had grown much stronger. The aura he felt from Lei Chen was actually quite similar to the berserker he killed using scattering blood. You almost broke through the 4th level of the blood solidification realm. Su Ming asked, surprised. Lei Chen grinned widely and walked up to Su Ming's side to speak softly to him. I have a feeling I'll reach the next level soon. Hee, the elder said, the berserker blood within my body is quite pure. If this continues, someday I will be able to reach the elder's level. As Lei Chen spoke, his eyes shone with excitement. Soon after, he began to look at Su Ming carefully and he was stunned. Then, he widened his eyes in disbelief. Just as he was about to speak. Come to my place tonight, we'll talk later. Let me go see the elder first. Su Ming knew what Lei Chen was about to say. He gave him a faint smile and went to the elder's house. As he watched Su Ming's back, Lei Chen was speechless. He pulled at his hair in confusion and mumbled a few words, trying to piece things together. However, in the end, he still could not understand it. He still remembered to go to Su Ming's place later that night though. As he approached the elder's house, Su Ming slowed down. There were slight signs of anxiety and fear in his eyes. Su Ming respected the elder for taking care of him since he was young. To him, the elder was just like his grandfather and their relationship could not be described with words. He did not want to lie to the elder, but there were some things that he could not disclose, like the piece of debris on his neck. Su Ming was not a child anymore. He could tell if the public knew about the piece of debris, it could very well mean the doom of the entire tribe, not just himself. He could not speak of it. Su Ming took a deep breath and stood in front of the elder's house. He did not enter immediately. He could hear the faint traces of voices coming from the inside, like people were in a meeting. He waited patiently until the door of the elder's house opened and out came 3 men. These 3 men were all built like small hills. When they appeared, Su Ming felt a great pressure. Their presence even caused the chi in his body to stir. He thought that he was about to be swept away by a typhoon. Su Ming inhaled sharply and took a few steps back instinctively. The 3 men were the leaders of Dark Mountain tribe. Before Su Ming awakened, he had not been as badly affected. He could only vaguely feel that they were some of the best berserkers besides the elder. Now that Su Ming was a practitioner at the 2nd level of the blood solidification realm, the oppressive feeling was much stronger than before when he met the tribe leaders. The chi within the tribe leader of Dark Mountain tribe was so great, he felt like it could shake heaven and earth. Combined with the vague berserker mark on his face, it only served to make him even more terrifying. Su Ming also knew the 2 men beside the tribe leader. The man on his left was also a man in his 40s. There was a mark shaped like a scorpion on his face. The level of chi within him was only slightly weaker than the tribe leader. His arms were also very long and there was a big bow slung across his back. For some unknown reason, when Su Ming looked at the bow, he felt like he could hear the agonizing cries of its numerous victims. It caused him to feel a little wary of the man. That man was the head of the guards of Dark Mountain tribe. The head of the guards was not a name, but a title given by its predecessor to the successor. There could only be one head of the guards in each tribe and it was a title given only to the strongest archers in the tribe. The last person standing to the tribe leader's right was a man in his 30s. His facial expressions were rather stiff. He was not a man who smiled and talked often. His eyes were usually narrowed into a slit and it was difficult to see the full view of his eyes. He was the chief of the hunters in Dark Mountain tribe and was responsible for all the hunts outside the tribe settlement. His name was Xianxia. These 3 people were considered to be the strongest in Dark Mountain tribe besides the elder. Su Ming took a deep breath and stepped aside as he bowed before them. The tribe leader was frowning. It was apparent that the meeting with the elder did not end on good terms. When he walked out of the house, he did not even look at Su Ming. He just walked past him. As for the head of the guards, he smiled at Su Ming when he saw him. Then, he nodded as a sign of acknowledgement to his presence before leaving with the tribe leader. Xianxia, the chief of the hunters, also treated Su Ming as if he was invisible. He ignored him as he walked by. After the 3 men left, there was a hint of dubiousness in Su Ming's eyes. He felt uncertain about the chi in his body. If Lei Chen could sense it, why did the 3 strongest berserkers in the tribe not feel anything? I already concealed your chi. Come in, why are you still standing outside? Just as Su Ming was still being troubled, the elder's stern voice sounded from within the house. Su Ming lowered his head and walked into the house. You finally decided to come back. The elder still wore a sackcloth and had his hair tied in many small braids. His features still looked as old and weary as ever, but his eyes were vibrant with life. His tone of voice was grave and serious, but the joy in his eyes could not be concealed. Su Ming mumbled a few words. He still hung his head low, not really having the courage to speak. You grew a pair of balls, is that it? How could you leave the tribe and not return for so many months? Have you forgotten about me? HMPH, lift up your head. Let me take a look at you. There were hints of dissatisfaction in the elder's voice. Su Ming's expression was anxious as he lifted his head and looked at the elder. Elder. Before he could finish, the elder, who was sitting with his legs crossed, suddenly grabbed Su Ming sternly with his right hand. Su Ming stumbled forward a few steps as the elder pressed his right hand on his chest. A soft and gentle power weaved itself into Su Ming's body. Once it melded together with his blood, it immediately healed the wounds that Su Ming did not even realize he received. It also dissolved the dangers of Su Ming risking his health when he forcefully reached the 2nd level of the blood solidification realm and killed without stabilizing the chi in his body. When the elder retrieved his right hand from Su Ming's chest, Su Ming trembled. He immediately took a spatula and opened up a gash on his arm. Instantly, black blood flowed out from the gash and there was even a stench in the air which came from the blood. You haven't even stabilized the chi in your body and you already ventured out to kill someone. You've really grown a pair, haven't you? As the elder observed Su Ming's reaction, the praise in his eyes grew stronger. Nonetheless, he still spoke harshly towards. Yet even as he did so, he took out a dark green bottle and handed it to Su Ming. When all the black blood flowed out from the gash, Su Ming's body felt refreshed. Once he took the bottle and opened it, he touched the liquid in the bottle with his finger and spread it over his wound. Chapter 17. Berserker Mark. Elder, I didn't want to do it. It's just that they went overboard. They snatched Xiao Hong away, Su Ming mumbled. The elder was stunned. One of them was a berserker at the second level of the blood solidification realm and the other was a berserker at the third level. Su Ming placed the cork back on the bottle, then put the bottle on the table beside him. Black Mountain Tribe, how did you manage to escape? The elder narrowed his eyes. A cold and steely look settled in his eyes. I didn't escape. They died. Su Ming lifted his head and looked at the elder. The elder was stunned but was also visibly moved. After falling silent momentarily, he decided not to ask Su Ming about the details. Su Ming was like his own child. He took care of him as he grew up and he knew of his character. You met them at Black Flame Mountain, right? The information you gave us last time was really useful. You should have been rewarded for that, but because you hid the fact that you've become a berserker, that reward is cancelled. Now that you're a berserker, stay. I will tell you about some of my experiences training in the ways of the berserker. I'll also card through the blood veins in your body. The elder looked at Su Ming and smiled. Elder, Su Ming scratched his head sheepishly. After a moment's hesitation, he opened his mouth and spoke softly, I'm sorry. Aren't you going to ask me how I became a berserker? Why should I? Everyone has their own secrets. I just need to know that my Su Ming has finally become a berserker. The elder laughed happily. Su Ming's eyes were teary. He looked at the elder and nodded. He would never forget the elder's kindness towards him or the dark dragon's saliva that had been flowing in his veins or all that had happened. All of these things were imprinted on his mind and soul. Elder, I have some pills, here. Su Ming looked at the elder and spoke softly. Pills? The elder asked in bewilderment, then shook his head and laughed. You're talking about herbs, right? I know that you must have gotten yourself some rare herbs, but I'm the elder of Dark Mountain Tribe. Unless they're really very rarely seen, I've seen every, what? Before the elder finished speaking, Su Ming produced 2 small bottles and placed them before the elder. The 2 bottles were filled with green pills and they were letting out a nice therapeutic scent. Both bottles had about a dozen pills within them. The elder's face turned solemn. He took one of the bottle containing the pills and inspected them. Once he was certain that it was nothing like he had ever seen, he took a sniff and his countenance immediately changed. What a strange medicine. I just took a sniff and I can already feel my blood circulating faster. The elder mumbled and scrutinized the pills further. After a moment, he closed his eyes and began to think. When he finally opened his eyes, he looked at Su Ming. These are called pills. Su Ming nodded his head and pointed towards the bottle containing the pills. He started introducing the effects and the methods of using the pills to the elder. The elder drew a sharp breath and his demeanor changed completely once he listened halfway. There were no signs of hesitation. The elder immediately waved his right hand and right before Su Ming, an illusion of the statue of the god of the berserkers appeared. The shape of the statue was that of the half-human, half-beast statue of the god of the berserkers from Dark Mountain Tribe. The moment the statue appeared, a gentle energy spread around the room. Continue. Su Ming looked at the elder's solemn face and felt his heart pounding against his chest. Then he continued to slowly tell the elder all the effects of the scattering dust. The elder was already standing. Once he finished listening to Su Ming, he took out one of the scattering dusts and observed it carefully. Then he swallowed it in one bite. He believed in Su Ming. There was practically no hesitation in his movements. He then took out a small purple bottle and drank down what little that remained in the bottle. He sat down with his legs crossed once again. Very soon, his body let out a bright and bloody red glow. The light was glaringly bright and it covered the entire room. Su Ming took a few steps back. His eyes were filled with admiration. He could see the many blood veins on the elder's body. He could not tell just how many there were, but the presence of a chi much stronger than the tribe leaders filled the entire room. Su Ming drew a sharp breath. He watched the god of berserkers' glowing statue floating midair and knew that if it were not for the illusion of the statue, the light released by the elder would have covered the entire tribe. It could possibly have been seen even from afar. The light disappeared just as quickly as it came. As the elder opened his eyes, the red light that enveloped his entire body also dissipated. His eyes were filled with a layer of excitement. He looked at the scattering dust and took a deep breath. Su Ming, you must remember one thing. The elder lifted his head and looked at Su Ming. Su Ming immediately stood to attention. From today onwards, do not tell anyone about the pills. Even if I asked you again, you mustn't speak of it. From today onwards, I will not ask you anything about this. Even within the tribe, you must remember not to talk about this to anyone. Not even to Lei Chen. The elder spoke sternly as he looked deeply into Su Ming's eyes. Su Ming hesitated for a moment. The elder sighed. He understood Su Ming. He knew that Su Ming was an honest man. That was why he chose to speak sternly again. Su Ming, listen to me. You mustn't tell anyone. Su Ming nodded silently as his gaze was filled with resolution. The tribe is not safe, the elder muttered, but his words surprised Su Ming momentarily. It dawned on him, especially when he remembered how the elder had hidden his chi from the 3 leaders of the tribe. There is a traitor in our tribe. Right now, only the tribe leader and I know about this. No one else knows about it. The traitor has hidden himself too well. We don't know who it is. With the information you brought to us, perhaps my old arch-nemesis from the Black Mountain tribe has really found a way to reach the next level. I've been feeling that the weather around the area has been a bit odd lately. It's as though a major disaster is about to approach. Su Ming, these pills of yours are good, so I'll be keeping them. Don't give me more of these. If I can really break through to the next level, these will be enough. But if I can't, even if you give me more, it'll still be useless. I'm not lacking in herbs, it's just that I'm stuck and I just need a chance to break through, the elder sighed. He spoke to Su Ming a little more about his experiences training in the ways of the berserker. Then he took out a strange object made of twigs. The elder's gaze was filled with nostalgia when he looked at the item. After some time, he gave the item to Su Ming solemnly. I got this when I was out adventuring during my younger days. This thing is called a bamboo slip. You will only see these in big tribes. There are a lot of uses of herbs recorded in this bamboo slip. Take it. Su Ming took the bamboo slip and was marveled by it. He put it away in his bosom and was just about to go back to his own house when the elder looked at Su Ming solemnly. Su Ming, I'm happy that you became a berserker, but you must understand that once you become a berserker, you are no longer the same as the normal members of the tribe. The road to become a practitioner of the ways of the berserker is extremely difficult. The slightest mistake can bring about death. You must have felt it when you were at Black Flame Mountain. But we are members of the berserker tribe. We cannot fear death, much less give up because the road ahead is too hard to walk. I know what your dreams are. You want to leave this place and travel to see the world. I fully support you. Su Ming listened quietly and nodded. You are a good child. I've watched over you for many years and I know that. But my training is insufficient and I can't help you too much. I thought it would be fine if our Su Ming couldn't become a berserker. However, if he did manage to become a practitioner of the berserker arts, then I will do everything that I can to make your journey as easy as possible. A smile gradually appeared on the elder's serious face and he waved at Su Ming to approach him. Come, sit down before me and circulate the blood in your veins as you usually do when you train. Su Ming looked at the old man whose hair was speckled with white and whose face was covered with wrinkles. The elder was smiling kindly at him. He knew that there were no blood ties between him and the elder, but the affection they felt towards each other could overcome all blood ties. Elder, Su Ming mumbled. Come here already. The elder laughed heartily. Su Ming sat down before the elder obediently and took a deep breath. Then he slowly began to move the chi around his body. Soon, the 6 blood veins manifested. As the 6 blood veins began to give out a red glow, the vague shadow of a 7th blood vein appeared and started to manifest slowly. Su Ming had been unable to manifest the 7th blood vein for the past month. He had not even been able to summon an illusion of it. This was largely connected to the internal injuries he had obtained. Since the elder had healed his internal injuries, the 7th blood vein appeared naturally when he activated the chi in his body. You've already inherited the knowledge from the statue of the god of the berserkers. You know that the berserkers will need to manifest 11 blood veins if they want to reach the 3rd level. As for the 4th level, they will need 25 blood veins. You will need 53 blood veins for the 5th, and there will only be more for the rest of the levels. As for the 11th level of the blood solidification realm, you should need 781 blood veins. But the manifestation of blood veins required may not be the same for some people. Most of the berserkers will need the same number of blood veins to reach the next level, but there are some people who are capable of increasing the number of blood veins in their body. The more blood veins you have, the more likely it is for you to reach the awakening realm. From what I've heard, all the berserkers who have managed to reach the awakening realm have always had more than 900 blood veins during the blood solidification realm. Take for example the elder of the Wind Stream tribe. I've known him for many years and I know that he had 917 blood veins many years ago. I've heard before that in middle-sized tribes and in some big tribes, there are those in the blood solidification realm who have manifested more than 930 blood veins. This is the blood solidification realm of the berserker tribe. There have been some people in the history of the berserker tribe who have manifested 999 blood veins during the blood solidification realm. These people have all become very famous and powerful people. There are even rumors that if you manifest 1000 blood veins, you will obtain completion in the blood solidification realm. But that sort of completion could only be seen during our ancestors' time more than thousands of years ago. It's extremely rare nowadays. I can say that no one has reached completion in the blood solidification realm. As for the details, I don't know about it because I don't have enough information. The elder's voice seemed to hold a strange sort of power that echoed in Su Ming's head as he moved the qi in his body. After blood solidification is the awakening realm. Awakening actually means to gather all the manifested blood veins and refine them into the purest form of berserker blood. Then you draw your own personal solidified berserker mark on your body. The berserker mark has to come from your own heart and desire. I'm excited to see what berserker mark you would draw should you reach the awakening realm someday. Chapter 18. The Art from the Berserker Ancestors. Su Ming, these are the things that you did not inherit from the statue of the god of berserkers, but they are things that all berserkers must know and remember. I might not be able to reach the awakening realm in my life. The elder in Wind Stream tribe was not as powerful as I was before he was 20. When he was 34, he was only barely able to keep up with me in a battle. Back then, there wasn't anyone who didn't know who I was in all the tribes around the area. The elder spoke slowly and his face flushed. There was even a hint of pride in his eyes. However, the radiance from his pride was dimmed by something, like it was sealed in a box and covered by a layer of dust. At that time, I had already arrived at the 9th level of the blood solidification realm. The elder sighed as he mumbled bitterly. He spoke as reminisced about the past. The sadness in his eyes grew. Su Ming, you must remember. There will always be people who are stronger and more powerful than you. You must never be arrogant. The elder shook his head, as if he did not want to talk about his past any longer. I've ventured out of the tribe 3 times in my life and I've experienced a lot of things. I may have lost just as much, but I learned a berserker art. This isn't a berserker art that Wind Stream tribe will ever learn. It is also difficult to find this in slightly bigger or medium-sized tribes. This is an art left behind by our berserker ancestors that can only be learned in big tribes. This is the true berserker's awakening art. You can only use it once in your life, and it is an art used to bless a chosen descendant. The elder narrowed his eyes in concentration and lifted his right hand. Almost immediately, his entire palm was filled with blood and he pressed his palm slowly on Su Ming's forehead. Su Ming, this is the first and only time I will cast the awakening art and I will cast it on you. This is my blessing for you. I hope you will one day fulfill my dreams and reach the awakening realm for Dark Mountain Tribe again. Activate the qi in your body and absorb the berserker blood I've trained for the past 80 years. The elder's entire body glowed a bloody red. That color was especially prominent in his right hand, and it looked as if blood was about to fall off his hand. A huge number of blood veins also manifested on his body. Just by looking at it, Su Ming could tell that there were approximately 700 blood veins. This was the elder's true power, a manifestation of more than 700 blood veins. Due to this, he was able to fight a berserker at the 10th level despite being only at the 9th level of the blood solidification realm. Su Ming trembled. As he circulated the qi around his body, a gigantic wave of heat that seemed to be endless flowed from his forehead into his entire body. It caused the flow of qi in his body to increase drastically. A huge amount of black substance flowed out of Su Ming's pores and he felt his body slowly becoming free of blockage. With each breath he took, his entire body felt like it simultaneously took in a huge amount of the air around him. Cracking sounds rang through the air. Su Ming's body no longer shivered but his face was flushed red as though he had just eaten a very good supplement. Even the blood veins in his body began to change. The 7th blood vein that was only an illusion earlier had already manifested. Once it did, the 8th blood vein followed suit and manifested as well. The 9th blood vein also appeared as an illusion. The speed of the qi flow in Su Ming's body had increased to a terrifying speed. With each complete circulation, it was as if all the blood in his body had clotted. He even had the false impression that his blood had turned into a sticky substance. This is the true meaning of the blood solidification realm. You must solidify and refine your own blood and transform them into berserker blood. When he was training in the past, he would always feel that he had insufficient blood not long into his training. At that moment, however, the feeling was gone as endless heat traveled into his body from his forehead. He even had the impression that the thought of not having enough blood was just an illusion. The elder, who was enveloped by a bloody glow, looked like he had turned into a giant red ball of light. Su Ming himself was also a bloody red ball of light, but compared to the elder, he was just like a firefly under the moonlight. Yet the firefly was absorbing the light from the moon and growing stronger quickly. This is just what the elder told me before. This is the true berserker's awakening in the berserker tribe. This is the berserker art that only big tribes possess, the ancient berserker art. The 9th blood vein manifested and the feeling of power enveloped Su Ming's entire body. The black substance had already been completely dispelled from his body and it was replaced by an indescribable fragrance. Su Ming sank into a warm and comfortable feeling. The elder kept his attention on Su Ming's body. He knew that the purpose of the ancient berserker art, the true berserker's awakening, was not to increase the chosen descendant's training but to eliminate all the undesirable substances within the body. It was to create a body suitable for training in the ways of the berserker for the chosen descendant. It could make the road to train in the ways of the berserker much easier for the chosen descendant. It was not just a simple banishment of undesirable substances. He had to use his berserker blood as a guide to expel the undesirable substances in a manner that he did not understand. It was technique that he could use only once in his life. If he tried to do it a second time, his body would burst and his soul would shatter. As the fragrance from Su Ming's body grew stronger, the elder smiled. Nevertheless, he did not stop. He took a deep breath and raised his left hand, pressing it over his right hand. Soon, an even stronger and greater wave of warmth entered Su Ming's body. Su Ming trembled. There was no longer any black substance coming out of his body, but as the warmth entered his body, a beating sound reverberated throughout his body. Then, more black substance was secreted from his body right before his eyes. At the same time, the 10th blood vein in Su Ming's body quickly manifested to its physical state. The process only lasted for a moment. Even the 11th blood vein was already showing itself faintly on his body. Once the 11th blood vein manifested itself, Su Ming would become a berserker at the 3rd level of the blood solidification realm. However, the manifestation of the 11th blood vein was proving itself to be extremely difficult. Even after Su Ming's body stopped excreting any black substance and released a nice fragrance, the 11th blood vein was still in an illusionary state. Su Ming, I cannot help you by forcefully increasing the state of your training. This will not bring any good to you. But if you're diligent, you'll reach the 3rd level naturally before long. The elder's voice echoed in Su Ming's ears. Su Ming took a deep breath and opened his eyes slowly. The moment he opened his eyes, the world looked slightly different. His sight became much clearer. The details he had never noticed before were now as clear as day. His world had become different. Both of his eyes were as clear as water, but if anyone took a closer look, they would see that his eyes were like the abyss. People who looked into them would be unable to look away. As he looked at the elder, he saw that the elder's face had aged once again. There were even signs of fatigue in his features. Despite that, there were clear signs of great kindness and affection as the elder gazed upon him. Su Ming stared at the elder in a dumbfounded state. In his silence, he knelt down and bowed towards the elder. Enough. You're a grown man now. You're no longer Allah Su. I'm a little tired. Go back. Let me rest. Elder. Su Ming bit his lip and gazed deeply at the elder, carving the scene before him into his mind. For all of eternity and his entire life, he would never ever forget that there was a person who accompanied him when he was younger and allowed him to experience familial love. He understood that this was a love that he would never be able to repay for his entire life. Come with me to Windstream Tribe next time. We'll be visiting the elder of Windstream Tribe and seeing the berserkers there. Representatives from Black Mountain Tribe, Dark Dragon Tribe and other smaller tribes will also be going. It will be a good experience for all of you in the younger generation. Before he left, he heard the elder's voice echoing in his ears. I've already concealed the chi and fragrance from your body. No one will notice unless they are more powerful than I am. Do not tell anyone about the fact that you became a berserker. We'll make a decision once I find the traitor. Su Ming nodded. When he saw the elder sitting down cross-legged with his eyes closed and immersing himself in his training, he quietly left. He knew that Windstream Tribe was the only medium-sized tribe around the region and it was considered as the leader of the area. Su Ming had heard rumors of the elder of Windstream Tribe being a powerful berserker who had arrived at the Awakening Realm. Not only did he have a long lifespan, he also had the power to crush heaven and earth. Awakening Realm. I wonder if I'll be able to arrive at that realm in my life. I wonder if I can even draw my own berserker mark. Su Ming's eyes lit up with ambition. The Awakening Realm was like a mere legend to him. It was still too far away from him. So this is the elder's real strength. I didn't expect him to be so strong. I heard that the elder from Black Mountain Tribe had some sort of secret, or else they wouldn't have been able to last so long. Su Ming shook his head and refused to continue thinking about the matter. When Su Ming returned to his house, which had been left barren for the past few months, he calmed down. The place was clean. There was barely any dust around. Su Ming knew that this could only mean that Xianxia dropped by during the days that he was gone. Xianxia was the only girl within Dark Mountain Tribe whom Su Ming had more contact with. She was the tribe leader's daughter and would only be married to the future tribe leader so that the tribe would continue to prosper and there were no disputes about that within the tribe. Su Ming knew this since a long time ago and was not offended or saddened by it. Xianxia was like a little sister to him and he held no other feelings towards her. He sat down with his legs crossed on the wooden bed. Su Ming touched the stone on his neck as he fell into deep thought. As nighttime arrived, Lei Chen came to Su Ming's house puzzled. When he saw Su Ming, he was dumbfounded. The silly look on his face made Su Ming smile. He took out the herbs he got from the remains of the berserker from Black Mountain Tribe. Su Ming knew about Sky Stone, of course. It was one of the rarer herbs found in the region. He had only managed to obtain one of them during all the years he went to collect herbs in the mountains. That too, had been only a young shoot. It was unlike the one he had in the present, which was fully grown and had 6 leaves. A sky stone with 6 leaves. I'll need more of them to make some medication, but I can give you a leaf. You might be able to use it to help with your training. Su Ming plucked one of the leaves from the plant and gave it to Lei Chen. Lei Chen laughed and scratched his head. Then he patted his chest bashfully after he took it from Su Ming's hands. Su Ming, I don't know about all this stuff. But I already told you since I was young, I will become the tribe leader of Dark Mountain Tribe in the future. As long as I'm around, I'll always protect you. Su Ming laughed heartily and as he spoke to Lei Chen, he noticed that Lei Chen kept looking at the sky stone leaf and was unable to concentrate to the conversation. It was obvious that he wanted to eat it and immediately start training. Hence, he pretended to be tired. When Lei Chen noticed it, he immediately lit up with excitement. He quickly got up and left. The sky had already darkened and silence gradually fell upon the tribe. Su Ming blocked the door to his house with a chair and sat down with his legs crossed on the bed. He took a deep breath and touched the stone hanging off his neck with his right hand. In his mind, he pictured the strange place he saw that day. I already have an ample supply of scattering dust ready. I wonder if I'll be able to obtain something new this time. Su Ming closed his eyes. He had long since figured out the method to enter the strange place. What he needed to do was gather all the blood to his chest when he was training. Then he would be able to go to the strange place. He had already tried it multiple times during his training. It was finally time for him to do it. Chapter 19. The Second Door. The place was still surrounded by fog. He could not see too far away. The only thing vaguely visible was the peak of the mountain amid the mist. It was quiet around him. There was neither wind nor sound around the area. Su Ming looked at the mountain shrouded by fog. It was his second time there. It was also the second time he stood where he was and sized up the strange mountain before him, especially the strange letters and drawings carved into the mountain. Su Ming had a sense of respect for whoever it was that left them behind. He took a deep breath and looked at the accessory on his chest. The black stone was gone. He pinched himself and was once again certain that he was not dreaming. He had really arrived at the strange place. He reached into his bosom and took out a few bottles that contained scattering dust. Then he quickly walked towards the fog. Before long, he arrived at the foot of the mountain and he went into the tunnel again. He did not stop until he reached the stone door in the tunnel. As he looked at the familiar circle in the middle of the door and the 15 small holes there, Su Ming hesitated for a moment. Then he took a pill out from one of the bottles. With the pill between his fingers, he placed it into the very first hole on the door. At the very moment his fingers touched the small hole on the door, Su Ming felt a faint pull coming from the hole and it sucked in the pill between his fingers. Su Ming's became stern and alert. He was unsure if his judgment was correct and he did not know what would happen once he filled up all 15 holes. However, he had envisioned this trip for a long time and a part of him was looking forward to it. He did not act rashly. After the first hole absorbed the pill, Su Ming focused his attention on the door, but nothing happened. Su Ming scratched his head. After a moment of thought, he took out another pill and placed it in the second hole. This continued until he placed the 15th pill into the last hole with much reluctance and nervousness. If there are still no changes even after I've placed 15 pills into the holes, all of this would be a waste. Su Ming watched the 15 holes anxiously. At that very moment, a gentle glow surfaced from the holes. Su Ming immediately retreated excitedly. As the light surrounded the door and gradually grew brighter, the strings on the door came to life and moved slowly. After a while, they joined together and started to turn quickly like a vortex. As they turned, the light from the 15 holes was slowly but surely sucked into the vortex, causing the door to be enveloped by a brilliant light. A roaring sound suddenly reverberated throughout the tunnel. The sound was so loud it could have made a person deaf. It made Su Ming involuntarily manifest the 10 blood veins within his body. He felt the blood in his entire body boiling and he instinctively resisted the pull. The roaring sound lasted for a few moments and green smoke emerged from the 15 holes. It was as if the pills had dissolved into smoke. As 15 puffs of smoke emerged from the holes, the gigantic stone door shook. A straight and narrow gap appeared all of a sudden at the center of the door. As soon as the gap appeared, the two sides of the door slowly swung to the side. The door opened. Su Ming's heart pounded against his chest. As he watched the scene unfold before him, he felt himself trembling in excitement. It was only after the door opened completely that Su Ming took in a sharp breath. There was no longer a tunnel behind the stone door but a small stone chamber. The walls in the chamber were not smooth, instead, they were filled with carvings. There was a large door that was tightly shut at the northern wall in the chamber. On the ceiling of the chamber were some stones glowing faintly. They had fused into the walls of the chamber. There was a faint aroma in the chamber which could lift a person's spirits the moment they took a whiff of it. Su Ming's eyes lit up with excitement, but he still walked into the chamber carefully. He swept his gaze around the walls and saw that the style of the carvings on the walls was similar to the ones in the tunnel. They all featured men with messy hair creating medicinal pills in an ancient setting. When Su Ming first arrived at the place, he was baffled by the drawings. However, following the success of his own quenching of the herbs and the additional memories he gained, he could understand most of them when he saw the drawings again. The figures on the drawings were creating different medicinal pills. As Su Ming observed the drawings, he could not help but be immersed in them. He verified each and every one of the drawings with his own experiences and forgot about time as he obsessed the drawings. He would move quickly to search for the next carving once he finished observing one. He did not realize how much time had passed. When he finished looking at all the carvings, he still longed for more and he cast his gaze on the door within the chamber. This door was slightly different from the first one. It was completely black and it gave off a nice aroma. It seemed like the materials used to build the door held some mysterious properties. It also had a sort of heaviness to it. There was a drawing on the door too, but it featured a gigantic cauldron. There were also wisps of smoke carved on top of it. It almost looked real. As Su Ming looked on, he had the impression that he was not looking at a drawing but at a real cauldron used for the quenching of herbs. If only I had a cauldron like this. Su Ming looked at the cauldron for a few more moments with envy. Su Ming saw a number of different herbs on top and on both sides of the cauldron. He immediately felt himself quivering in excitement and paid full attention to the drawing. This was what he came here for, to find more recipes to create other medicinal pills. To the left of the cauldron were 7 herbs. Among the 7 herbs, 5 of them were herbs needed to create scattering dust. As for the other 2, Su Ming had never seen them before. After he carefully observed their features, Su Ming imprinted their image on his mind. There were 8 holes on the stone door arranged neatly, right underneath the recipe. To the right of the cauldron were 8 herbs. The recipe was slightly similar to the recipe on the left. 5 of the herbs required were also the necessary ingredients for scattering dust. When Su Ming saw the additional 3 ingredients necessary, his eyes lit up with joy. He knew 2 of the 3 herbs. They were just slightly rare. There were also holes underneath this recipe, but the number was slightly more than the recipe on the left. There were 12 holes underneath it. When Su Ming looked at the recipe on the top of the cauldron, his face became grim. The ingredients to the recipe were not herbs. The drawing was of 3 things that would incite fear among those who saw them. The first was the scales from the tail of a python, the second was the 9th leg from a 9-legged spider, and the third was the 3rd finger from the right hand of a small black humanoid creature, the size of a palm. Strangely, there were no holes underneath the 3rd recipe. Perhaps, it was because the medicinal pill was too hard to create, so it was not necessary to make it. Su Ming fell silent momentarily. He walked towards the stone door and raised his right hand. Without any hesitation, he pressed his hand on the door and immediately, the drawing of the cauldron emitted a piercing light. It enveloped Su Ming's body. After a moment of discomfort, foreign memories appeared once again in Su Ming's mind. He obtained the method to create the 3 medicinal pills and their names. South Asunder. Su Ming looked at the drawing on the left of the cauldron, then turned his gaze to the right. Mountain Spirit. As for the last one, the welcoming of deities. Su Ming looked at the strange recipe on top of the cauldron and mumbled. As Su Ming thought about them, the light surrounding his body gradually dimmed along with the light from the cauldron on the stone door. Once the light completely disappeared, Su Ming's vision blurred, but he was not nervous. He had already experienced this once. There was a strange whistling sound next to his ears. Once it was over, his vision slowly returned, and he found himself in his room within the tribe settlement. Su Ming took a deep breath and walked towards the door immediately. He took away the chair and opened the door. It was still night time outside. The stars shone in the sky. It was quiet as the cold night wind blew past him. However, there was a faint silver light at the horizon, a clear sign that dawn was about to arrive. Looks like the difference in time between the 2 places is not too big. Su Ming closed the door behind him and sat down with his legs crossed again. He cupped his chin with his hands and began thinking. All 3 crafting methods are different for the 3 medicinal pills. I've never seen the 2 herbs required for South Asunder, so I can ignore that for now. As for the welcoming of deities, Su Ming narrowed his eyes. The ingredients required for this pill aren't herbs and the items are simply too strange. But what happens once the pill is created is really shocking. Single quote. Su Ming remembered how the weather had changed when the person in his memories created the welcoming of deities. The sight of the wind and clouds traveling backwards and made his heart pound fiercely. The effects of the pill must be really shocking. But it's a pity, It's clear with the lack of holes on the stone door that the creation of this pill is extremely difficult, that's why it does not serve as a key to open the door. Single quote. With some thought, Su Ming already guessed about half of the true story. Looks like the only thing I can create for now is mountain spirit. I know 2 of the 3 additional herbs, I may not have it now but there must be some in the tribe's herbal storage. As Su Ming continued thinking, light gradually filled the sky and a new day arrived. He had not rested an entire night but Su Ming was not tired at all. The lack of fatigue became obvious when he reached the 2nd level in the blood solidification realm. It was as if he had obtained a huge amount of energy. Unless he went a few nights without sleep, he would not become tired. As day arrived, the members of the tribe started busying themselves with work. Once Su Ming cleaned himself up, he walked towards a house made of grass not far away from his own house. It was surrounded by a fence which was constantly guarded by a few members of the tribe. Chapter 20. Bei Ling. The wind in the morning was cold and with the winter, it felt like there were blades cutting through his skin as it blew past him. In spite of that, with the bonfire burning amid the tribe, a gentle warmth surrounded the entire tribe as it expelled the cold. The circulation of qi within their bodies allowed berserkers to resist the cold, but as most of the members of the tribe were normal people, most of them chose not to venture out during winter. Even if they did go out, they would wear thick hides to fend against the cold. During the winter, common healers in the tribe would also be at their busiest. They had to create vast amounts of medication to increase the tribe members' immunity against the cold. The elder would also activate the qi in his body during the coldest days of the season to help the entire tribe last through the cold. Su Ming wore a beast skin shirt that covered his entire body and trudged through the snow towards the tribe as he listened to the crunchy sounds from the snow under his feet. Looking at the familiar sights in his tribe and at the tribe members greeting him with smiles, it warmed his heart. It seemed to chase away the frigid winter cold. The houses in the tribe were mostly simple in design. They were fine during the other seasons but they could not provide shelter against the wind during winter. They had to cover the walls of the houses with a large amount of hides to prevent the cold from entering their houses. Sometimes, the hides would not stick to the walls for a long period of time and would require regular maintenance. The tribe members themselves also needed to add wood to the fires in their houses regularly. Hence, winter was torture for most of the tribe members. At the very least, the cold did not kill them but it was still troublesome. Su Ming arrived at the building constantly guarded by a few members of the tribe. It was the herbal storage for Dark Mountain tribe. The walls of the building outside were covered by thick layers of hide. There were also several bonfires burning around the building. They allowed him to feel a layer of heat as he rode on the tails of the cold wind when he went near. Su Ming was familiar with the place. Every single time he returned after collecting herbs, he would deliver all the herbs he collected there. So, when the guards saw Su Ming, they smiled and did not stop him. Su Ming smiled back and greeted them as he went through the fence. Just as he was about to open the door and enter, a happy voice called out from behind. Su Ming, when did you come back? It was a girl's voice. It was pleasant to the ears and sounded just like the ringing of 100 bells. Su Ming stopped and turned around. When he saw her, his gaze softened. The owner of the voice was a slightly big girl. She was covered entirely in thick hide and her long hair was tied together with a grass string. There were 2 exquisitely made bone earrings hanging off her ears. Her skin was a little rough but it did not hide her beauty. Her eyes were big like giant puddles of water but they were clear, showing off her innocence. There was happiness in her eyes as she walked briskly towards Su Ming. I came back yesterday. Su Ming smiled. She was the person who cleaned his house regularly when he was away, Xianxia. Suddenly, Su Ming froze on as he looked behind her. She was not alone. There was a young man in his late teens following her. The young man was big in build and he looked even sturdier than Lei Chen. He only wore a thin beast skin shirt in the winter. His hair was messy but not dirty. His sharp jawline gave him a prideful air. His eyes especially looked like stars. It was as though something strange shone from within his eyes. He gave off an oppressive air and kept others on edge when they were around him. He was like a wild beast. He stood there with a huge bow slung across his back. His gaze felt like arrows as he looked at Su Ming. Su Ming. Bei, Bei Ling. Su Ming looked at the young man and spoke respectfully as a complicated look flitted through his eyes. The young man before him was the strongest among their generation in the Dark Mountain tribe. Even the elder mentioned that he could not hope to win against the talent that he had. Lei Chen was the only one who could somewhat compete against him after he awakened. As the strongest of the younger generation in the tribe, the speed of his training was incredibly fast. Su Ming once overheard the elder saying that he was the one who held the most promise to break through the blood solidification realm and become one of the few to reach the legendary awakening realm. His name was also known throughout the other tribes around them. Even Wind Stream tribe had heard of him and they sent messengers to take him away to be trained in their tribe. Su Ming did not expect to see him. His feelings towards Bei Ling were complicated because when he was young, Bei Ling had taken care of him like an older brother. Even his skills with the bow were taught by Bei Ling. Bei Ling was after all, the head of all the children in the tribe. His archery skills were no laughing matter. However, all of this changed when Chen Xin was 12 years old. Perhaps it was because Chen Xin and Su Ming were too close, that was why Bei Ling started looking at Su Ming oddly and suspiciously. His looks became cold and distant later on. Bei Ling even chose to ignore him when they met. It was not until much later when Su Ming learned that the tribe leader and Bei Ling's father had already made arrangements for Chen Xin and Bei Ling to be engaged. Su Ming wanted to explain himself, but his words were rewarded with a cold look. Eventually, he could only sigh regretfully and started distancing himself from Chen Xin. He understood his own position. He knew that he was only a normal member of the tribe. He also knew that if it were not for the elder, he may not have even been accepted into the tribe. Su Ming was an abandoned baby whom the elder adopted when he went out on a journey dozens of years ago. The members of the tribe were kind towards him, but it did not change the fact that he did not belong. "Why didn't you tell me you came back? I went to look for you a few times but you weren't there." Chen Xin scrunched up her nose and complained. Su Ming touched his nose and avoided Chen Xin's gaze. He only treated Chen Xin as a sister and harbored no other feelings for her. He did not want Bei Ling, who had been kind towards him, to continue misunderstanding. "Bei Ling, when did you come back?" Su Ming looked towards Bei Ling, who exuded a powerful air. He could feel an endless amount of qi coming from Bei Ling's body. The strength of his qi was the strongest he had seen after the elder and the leaders in the tribe. The fierce pride he felt from the other was also as strong as his qi. It made Su Ming feel like suffocating just by standing before him. Yesterday, Bei Ling's gaze was as usual. It was cold and he spoke little, like he wanted it done and over with quickly. He turned and looked towards Chen Xin standing by his side. "Xin, didn't you want to collect some herbs for your mother? Let's go." As Bei Ling spoke, he held Chen Xin's hand and walked past Su Ming. Then he pushed the door to the herbal storage open and went in. Chen Xin wanted to say something, but after a brief moment of hesitation, she chose not to. Instead, she nodded at Su Ming and followed Bei Ling into the building. Su Ming stood there silently. After a while, he sighed and went in as well.